It's 6:30 or 5:30 this evening, so I'd like to call to order the Shenandoah County School Board meeting and ask if there's a recommendation that we meet in closed session.
Thank you. I recommend that the Shenandoah County School Board convene a closed meeting under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act in order to discuss and consider several personnel matters involving the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, discipline, or resignation under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A14, and to discuss scholastic records involving the discussion or consideration of admission or disciplinary matters concerning any student of any state school system under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A2, and pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29, to discuss the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and to convene a closed meeting session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, to discuss the audit of special education funds for fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, and to discuss the Virginia State Conference NAACP et al. Versus County School Board of Shenandoah County case.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. Before I ask for a motion to that effect, I want to note that the two members of the school board are not present. We anticipate that Tom Street will not be here this evening, but we do anticipate that Gloria Carlinia will be here at some point, and when she makes her appearance, you'll note it in the record. Okay. Do I have a recommended motion?
I move that the Shenandoah County School Board convene a closed meeting under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act in order to discuss and consider several personnel matters involving the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, discipline, or resignation under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A14, and to discuss scholastic records involving the discussion or consideration of admission or disciplinary matters concerning any student of any state school system under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A2, and pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29, to discuss the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and to convene a closed meeting session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, to discuss the audit of special education funds for fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, and to discuss the Virginia State Conference NAACP County versus County School Board of Shenandoah County case.
Thank you, Mr. Gutschall, for that motion. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not opposed? We will reconvene in closed session. It's 6:11. We would like to reconvene in open session. Do I have a well, before we go into the motion, I'd like to note that Tom Street will be absent for this evening's meeting, and that Gloria Carlinio rejoined our meeting at approximately 5:55. Did you note that earlier? Thank you. Okay. So now I'd like to entertain a motion to reconvene in open session.
Move to reconvene in open session.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. A motion made by Mr. Gutschall. All in favor of meeting in open session, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. I'd like to read the following statement. The Shenandoah County School Board hereby certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Shenandoah County School Board. Each member responds, I so certify when called, and Cheryl, would you call the roll call vote, please?
Ms. Carlinia?
I so certify.
Mr. Gutschall?
I so certify.
Mr. Vance?
I so certify.
Mr. Rickard?
I so certify.
And Mr. Barlow?
I so certify. Mr. Gutschall, we'll bring the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please bow your head. Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to serve our community and guide the education of our children. Grant us wisdom, patience, and understanding as we make decisions that impact the future of our students. Help us to work together with respect, keeping the best interests of our students, teachers, and families at heart. May our discussions be thoughtful, our choices be wise, and our actions be just. We ask for your guidance and blessing in all that we do. Amen. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it has been presented?
I move to approve the agenda as it's been presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. A second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Carlinio. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Dr. Shepard, you have some recognitions for us this evening.
I do, thank you. So first, I would like to recognize our Shenandoah County Public Schools music students earning all district selections. So Shenandoah County Public School students from Strasburg, Central, and Stonewall Jackson High School auditioned for and were selected to perform at the All District 14 Orchestra and Band concerts held January 25th at Kettle Run High School and February 1st at Millbrook High School, respectively. I would like to introduce Mr. Devin Eslick from Strasburg High School, Ms. Lauren Schutner from Central High School, and Madison Farmer from Stonewall Jackson High School to come forward.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Devin Eslick, and I teach orchestra and band at Strasburg High School. One of my students who participated in the all-district band as a clarinet player is going to tell you all a little bit more about what exactly these students are being recognized for.
Hello, my name is Ruby Litchens. I played at the district band concert as a clarinet player. I want to say getting to perform with talented musicians from all over the area was a truly special experience. Not only did we play music, we performed, shared resources, and most importantly, we got to collaborate. In December, we auditioned against many other musicians from around the district. Challenged to make ourselves stand out, the audition included scales, sight reading, and a prepared piece. We were selected as the top scoring musicians for the instrument we play and were invited to play with the group. 2 weeks ago, the selected students met at Millbrook High School in Winchester to perform together. We got our music, and about after 2 days of rigorous practice, we performed our concert in Millbrook's auditorium. This event reminds us of how valuable music education is. So on behalf of myself and all of the other musicians here, I want to say thank you for supporting music in our schools.
I have two students who would like to share a brief statement about their experience with district band and district orchestra, respectively. I'm introducing Haley Wilkins.
Good evening, my name is Haley Wilkins and I am a junior clarinet player and drum major at Stonewall Jackson High School. I want to say thank you so much for making the opportunity to attend district band possible. Rehearsing in auditoriums with guest conductors and with our peers across our county and district is what makes honor band events like All District Band and Page Shenandoah Honor Band unique. Having the chance to attend district band gave me the opportunity to be challenged by harder music in a fast-paced environment while working with new people in the music community. Thank you so much for making this opportunity available.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ella LaCraw and I'm a junior viola player for Stonewall. Like band, District Orchestra is an auditioned ensemble that selects the best students to create a full semi-professional ensemble or team. These students are expected to already have the music under their belts and ready to fine-tune. This year we were able to stay overnight, which allowed students to work on community building with each other and make the long schedule more bearable. This event was enjoyable and we learned so much on not only how to play better, but to be better musicians and support our music program. Thank you again for this opportunity.
So we would like to congratulate our band and orchestra students, and if you guys will all come up here, and right here we're going to get a group picture. So.
Cool.
What are you doing back there? Your call. I'm sorry. It's okay. There's like a circle. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you. So February is School Board Appreciation Month. School board members are elected to represent the interests of students, teachers, parents, and other stakeholders. The school board plays a vital role in ensuring that students have access to a high-quality education, and members are responsible for the oversight, success, and effectiveness of school systems. February is School Board Appreciation Month, and we would like to acknowledge and celebrate our school board members. And at your desk, you have a certificate of recognition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then School Board Clerk Appreciation. We could not do it without our school board clerks, Ms. Jett and Ms. Stickley. The third week of February has been designated as School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. In honor of School Board Clerk Appreciation Week, let's take a moment to recognize and express our appreciation for the outstanding contributions of school board clerks Cheryl Jett and Deputy Clerk Crystal Stickley. As we celebrate School Board Clerk Appreciation Week, let's acknowledge the role the school board's clerk and deputy clerk play in the smooth operation of the school board meetings. The clerks attend meetings, maintain accurate records, and address the needs of our school division. Ms. Jett's and Ms. Stickley's attention to detail and organizational skills positively impact the lives of students, teachers, administrators, school board members, and superintendents. We are fortunate to have them as part of our team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shepherd, for those recognitions. And we are ready for public and staff comments on agenda items and non-agenda items. So, I'd like to read the following statement. The Shenandoah County Public Schools welcomes public comment from Shenandoah County residents, parents, guardians, as well as from current students and employees of Shenandoah County Public Schools. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting or hearing. Each speaker may speak up to 3 minutes. The board generally allows up to 30 minutes for public comments on agenda and non-agenda items at the beginning of the meeting. If there are a large number of speakers, the board may limit the time. I don't think that we're going to have that problem today. All comments should address a matter related to Shenandoah County Public Schools. Comments regarding division employees should be directed to the school principal or an appropriate school division official. The school board expects that each speaker will be courteous, modeling for our students how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. Speakers will address their comments to the entire school board and not to one individual board member, to the superintendent, to a staff member, nor to the audience. Speakers will not engage in personal attacks. Speakers have signed up for this public meeting on the document provided to me by the clerk. Clerk has ascertained speakers have indicated their roles as stakeholders and have valid addresses, and the speakers will be called to order once they're signed up. Time allows, Chair may allow comments from individuals who have not signed up. If you do have any written comments, they should be passed to the clerk. If you have 8 copies of that and you have written, you may do so when you come up to speak. And the first speaker I have recorded is Rebecca Troutner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you each like a copy of this? I brought copies. Would you
Sure.
like a copy of it? You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready? Okay. I want to bring to your attention significant concerns, primarily in special education, I have witnessed and experienced at Sandy Hook as a substitute and parent. I have to talk fast, there's a lot, and this isn't even all of it. The federal and state SPED regulations are not being followed. For example, civil rights. My daughter has auditory processing disorder and as a result experiences severe anxiety, which was affecting her ability to attend and participate in school. So I began the child study process. At our first meeting, she was found ineligible for services simply because she had good grades. No child can be discriminated against or denied services based on their grades alone. I was issued a truancy letter the very next day by the same admin that attended that child study meeting. Instead of helping the child, the parent was punished, but I digress. Americans with Disabilities Act. The playground is not ADA compliant. Even the wheelchair swing that was installed just a few years ago is not compliant. Free and appropriate public education. There's a 5th grade student that cannot speak English and cannot read or write in Spanish, but was denied a translator device to translate their schoolwork because it's a crutch. Child find. It is well known that school does not like testing the younger children. We should wait and see or we'll keep them on the radar. Child find requires schools to test all students from birth to 21 years of age whenever there is a suspected disability. These issues are only the tip of the iceberg. I can only imagine how many students have been denied services they need because the school isn't following the regulations and listening to the parents and teachers when they request testing for a suspected disability. There's no one SPED certified overseeing the SPED program at Sandy Hook to offer daily guidance and support to the SPED staff and ensure services are being provided according to regulations in each child's IEP. There's no one SPED certified overseeing 504 plans. As a result, many students have been affected. My daughter has not been receiving her accommodations all year until recently when I contacted her case manager. She went from a 61% of each of her reading and math district assessments for quarter 1 to a 35% in math and 48% for reading in quarter 2. 4 SPED teachers, each with their own caseloads, are forced to share one room that contains each of their desks, one shared phone, and their only space to provide specialized instruction, small group testing, and provide behavioral and academic support. This forces staff daily to try and find space in the hallway, cafeteria, wherever they can find space. On multiple occasions, they have even been forced out of their only room so it can be used for gen ed trainings. We can't expect progress of our SPED kids in that type of environment. Parapros are constantly being pulled to cover classrooms for meetings. Several students have been assigned a one-to-one para, but some have not even received that support yet
because the pairs are constantly pulled. The much-needed full-time pairs were already removed from the kindergarten classrooms, and now sometimes they can't even get in there for their part-time hours they are limited to because they are constantly pulled. I'm going to skip that next point, but you have that information. One of the SPED teachers left on or around November 22nd. Parents were not notified that she was gone until December 17th. Even then, they were likely only notified because her departure was made public by the parent the day before. The parent should have been notified the same day. Thank you.
Susie Wilburn.
My name is Susie Wilburn, and I use she, her pronouns. Ms. Carlinio has made it clear that she believes a lot of misinformation about transgender people when she speaks of vile and demonic ideology. The truth is that there is no ideology, and in fact there are very few places where transgender people can turn for professional help. She simply wants these students to go away and is certainly not ready to understand them in any shape or form. Isn't it her job to care for all the students? Almost all transgender people diagnose themselves prior to seeking help. It is not uncommon for transgender people to report that they understood their identity as early as 3 years old.
Excuse me one second, please. Can we just hold the time?
I don't believe that she's supposed to be addressing any one school board member, according to the statement that you read.
I didn't address you personally. I was talking about you in general as to your views that have been.
Okay, so it's okay. So are you're going to continue and you're not going to mention any further names?
Sure, I can do that. Almost all transgender people diagnose themselves prior to seeking help. It is not uncommon for transgender people to report they understood their identity as early as 3 years old. Together with supporting medical professionals, these individuals can chart a path forward that gives the person the best chance of success. There is no single course of treatment. When the school system provides acceptance and support needed to help that person grow into a healthy adult, there are more positive outcomes with trans individuals. Acceptance or lack of acceptance plays a major role in the mental health of the student. Studies show that transgender minors in an accepting environment attempt suicide at less than half the rate of those in environments that don't accept them for who they are. No parent wants to lose a child. I certainly empathize with parents whose children have died too soon, no matter the circumstances. I lost my own son 10 years ago, and it is the worst. Trust me, it's the worst. The policies that tell transgender people that society does not believe what they say is real will lead directly to the deaths of students, and parents will be the ones wishing they had done more to help. Because of this, I urge that you eliminate the January change to policy INB about subjects. The proposed change to the ban allowing counselors to speak with children is a step in the right direction, but why are you excluding teachers? While teachers are not counselors, teachers often show their students compassion and love. Though a teacher might not be the right person to offer counseling, the teacher can be a thoughtful listener and help guide the student toward appropriate resources. Resources that we already have in Shenandoah County, such as Beef Like Woodstock. The proposed change to policy GBAG/JFHAB is ambiguous for everyone. The proposal indicates that the intent for this policy is fear of a lawsuit that has happened in other federal districts. If this is a real worry, then the right answer is to amend the policy to allow a teacher to opt out and to notify the school in the same way that the parents must. This makes the policy clear and gives everyone a path forward. While I personally think this allows a teacher to use...
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Stratton.
Could I do an introduction before you start the time? My name is Elizabeth Stratton. I'm a retired teacher from Central High School, and I was delighted to be able to teach English 11, creative writing, and most especially theater arts. Thank you. Oh, In the last 6 months, certain politicians have made transgender people a target of choice because trans folk are few in number and the population at large does not have an understanding of gender nonconforming people. Consequently, lies about trans people have spread. Our institutions, our public schools, make policy based on these lies and misunderstandings. They do immense harm to a group that has done nothing wrong and wants to live their lives the way everyone does, free from persecution. Dismissive policies that target transgender people and make their lives more difficult are against American values and traditions. Trans people are not predators. Unfortunately, I feel that some politicians are preying upon trans people. My Shenandoah County School Board must not get caught up in this frenzy of discrimination sweeping our culture. If it does, I suspect that history will remember this board as insensitive to the point of being cruel and inhumane, not a label that any of you wants to have attached to your legacy as a Shenandoah County School Board member. The proposed change to policy privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Shenandoah County Public Schools that would remove the section stating that parents can inform the school of the name and pronouns appropriate for their own children is exactly such a policy. Removal of clearly defined regulations to be replaced with nothing. How will individual schools handle this? Will some schools accommodate this request while others deny it? Unfortunately, written policy will no longer offer guidance. The stated reason for the change to allow a teacher to weaponize the First Amendment right against children is not the real motivation. If it were, the proposed change would be to amend the policy to allow the teacher to opt out of this request. That was not done. Instead, the board wants to eliminate the entire policy. This absolutely does not solve the problem. Instead, it creates a vacuum where policy should exist and does nothing to protect the dignity of our children. The same is true of the change to policy teaching about controversial issues enacted in January. This policy makes the very word transgender taboo in our schools. It makes our trans students officially invisible.
Ms. Stratton, your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Laurie Thomas Fowler?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
The proposed change to policy GBAB/JFHAB is unnecessary and counterproductive. It claims to be about preserving the rights of teachers while removing any official way for the parents of transgender students to be sure their children will be treated with dignity and respect. It is an attack on one group of people masquerading as protection for another. This is a tactic that has become all too common in modern America. The school board should not be participating in this sort of behavior. That it occurs in a policy about dignity and respect makes it even worse. It is clear that if the board implements this change, that it is not about the assistance for the transgender students, but a solution in search of a problem. This also applies to January 9th changed policy INB on teaching controversial subjects. I don't see how it's controversial for a child to get help that he or she needs. For the school to turn its back on these students is the worst kind of behavior. It seems the board itself agrees that it has overstepped its boundaries in January. However, rather than amending the January 9th change, it should be eliminated. At the very least, teachers should be included in the sentence about the school personnel who can speak to students. Allowing them to speak does not force them to speak. Teachers are the most likely adult that a student might turn to for help. the proposed change doesn't allow the teacher to even engage with the student. As someone who grew up in a home with an abusive parent, I can speak from experience that teachers are a trusted resource. Again, the right solution to the problem is to remove the text the board added in January to begin with. The net result of these kinds of changes to school policy is to tell transgender students that they aren't welcome in Shenandoah County. Studies show that transgender students in accepting environments are far less likely to attempt suicide than students in repressive environments. Respect the students and the parents. Don't make the Shenandoah County school system a place where some students will experience harm, fear, and indignity. Thank you for your time.
Linda Thomas Fowler.
The school board, through its policies, speaks about respect for the dignity and privacy of students. The board even names the policy GBAB/JFHAB, Privacy, Dignity, and Respect for all students and parents in Shenandoah County Public Schools. If this is true, then why would the board remove a policy intended to give direction to both the school system and parents on how to handle the name and pronouns of a student? Removing this policy shows a complete lack of respect. When combined with the January 9th changes to policy INB that prohibit even acknowledging the existence of transgender students, it shows not just disrespect, but verges on being outright antagonistic. The board seems to have realized this based on the proposed changes to INB this month, but the right solution is to remove all of the January 9th text, not to simply amend it. Taboo subjects have no place in our schools, where children should be free to learn about the world. Transgender issues can be complex, but experience shows that children handle them very easily unless an adult forces their acceptance to be a problem for them. By making the subject forbidden, the school board is sending a message that the board doesn't think that transgender people and the medical professionals that treat them are telling the truth. Indeed, comments by one school board member show that she thinks a vast conspiracy exists to recruit children into a vile and demonic transgender lifestyle. Whatever those motives, if the board follows these recommendations, then the result will harm transgender children. When transgender children are schooled in an accepting environment, they're much more likely to grow up into happy and productive adults. What she does not see is the tens of thousands of transgender people who have successfully transitioned and gone on to live happy lives. They are simply a part of society that we don't notice because there is nothing to notice. They are just people who have successfully handled a difficult situation. This is why policy INB should be rolled back to the version before January 9th, and why the proposed changes to policy GBAB/JFHAB should be rejected. Taking a clear policy and replacing it with nothing will create situations where children can be traumatized by the school system's inconsistent handling of their situations. If the board thinks that legal cases that are cited as an excuse for changing the policy are a valid concern, then it should simply amend the policy to allow a teacher to opt out. These teachers, though, should not be teaching transgender students, since they misuse their religious freedom to deny these students the dignity and respect they deserve. Thank you.
Rhonda Zingraf.
Hello. I actually am delighted by the draft policy change about treatment of controversial issues. I think it's a great step on behalf of all students' safety and healthy development. In the list of all who may respond to student concerns, the absence of teachers seems mistaken, and I hope that will be corrected and changes be approved. And many thanks to all who had a hand in this. The proposed revision to the policy on privacy, dignity, and respect, on the other hand, should definitely be rejected. It's simply wrong to uphold parental rights only when you happen to agree with the parents. When a family has reached a decision, however challenging it may have been, to bring a written request for the school's cooperation in a child's name or pronoun change, They need for you to treat them with respect and compassion and dignity. And your policy already calls for that in Section 3D, number 1, and this revision would do the opposite. Moreover, the proposal is misleading about the law. It claims binding federal legal precedent to argue that you can deny parental rights and have the law on your side. But the Supreme Court case it mentions only provided, quote, preliminary injunctive relief, end quote, from compliance with Title IX regulations issued by the Department of Education. That is not the final word on federal law or on Title IX. You can find this very different ruling on a different case at the federal level, and I quote from Grimm's decision, quote, at the heart of this appeal is whether equal protection and Title IX can protect transgender students from school policies that prohibit them from affirming their gender. We join a growing consensus of courts in holding that the answer is resoundingly yes. And in light of that court decision, this proposal would violate the law. Lastly, the motion makes false threats by predicting costly lawsuits over First Amendment rights, unless you shut the door on parents' rights. It refers to a case where a teacher was fired over a pronoun dispute. But why make this into a termination issue? Just as in schools elsewhere, why not simply count on most people to be understanding of a family situation and be prepared to mediate if religious freedom or First Amendment conflicts arise? Your protections clause in this very policy, current section I, already sets this up. Thank you.
Rhonda Richard.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, Chairman Barlow, board members, and Dr. Shepard. Congratulations to all the Moore Grant recipients, first off. February is School Board Appreciation Month. School board members are elected or appointed officials who serve as the governing body of the school district. Those responsibilities include setting educational policies, approving budgets, hiring and evaluating superintendents, and advocating for students, teachers, and staff. You work tirelessly to make decisions to impact the entire community, often volunteering your time without seeking any recognition. It is at this time that I ask that the budget include a raise for the school board members. Surprising, I know, coming from me. As I don't know anyone that works the hours some of you do as a board member for such little pay, which is about $200 a month. While I understand this job isn't about the pay you receive, but appreciation should be given. Now, I personally want to thank those members that take the time to talk, respond to texts or emails, the ones that take time from the work schedule, family time to answer questions or be ridiculed by community members. While some on this board choose not to give as much as a simple thank you or acknowledgement to emails or texts received, those that do deserve a thank you, so thank you. One of the primary roles of school board members is to develop and approve policies that guide the operation of schools. This includes the curriculum standards to safety protocols. You all have done a great job. The impact of the school board members and their contributions extend beyond policy and governance. It's building strong partnerships with the community between schools, parents, and businesses and stakeholders. So board members, thank you. That's surprising.
Lauren Bateman.
I don't have a lot prepared on paper, so I'm just going to speak. I'm new to this area 3 years, and so I'd be doing this in Maryland if I wasn't here. But I love being in a small town, and I'm from Strasburg, and everybody seems very proud of graduating from their schools. So I want to hand that to you for helping with all that. I am concerned about nationally and what's trickling down about mistreating children and being judgmental as opposed to accepting different children. It's just any kind of discrimination or attention to it is going to, be harmful to them. And I've been a mental health nurse also with my nursing for 43 years, and a school nurse too. And it's just, they're not at the, elementary, even middle, high school, they're not comfortable with who they are at all yet. And this adds, a transgender type of idea adds a lot of stress to them. And when they're discriminated against, it causes anxiety with all the rest of the children too. They realize that it's not the right thing to do. So I would just encourage everything be of acceptance and not agreement. And if there's federal pressure to write it in a way that it sounds like you did it, but didn't do it and did the right thing. Thank you.
Renee, I have a problem pronouncing your
I'm
last
sure you do. It's Ingreo.
Ingreo?
Ingreo.
Ingreo, thank you.
Yes.
All right, I didn't prepare a whole lot on paper either, so I'm just going to speak to you. I have some questions and some concerns about the new attendance policy that has come into effect recently. I was super surprised. A few weeks ago, I got a phone call from my kindergartner saying that he needed to stay after school because he had too many absences so far this year. He has had 2 very bad ear infections, one that needed ear drops and antibiotics because it wouldn't go away, and he has had the flu, which has turned into more problems, and now his tonsils are enlarged. On a scale of 0 to 4, 4 being the worst, his are a 4.5. I'm still sending him to school, but he will be having his tonsils out hopefully very soon. But when I was called first from the school, and I was like, but he has doctor's notes, so why are we here? And she said, well, doctor's notes aren't really looked at anymore. It's just by the absences, and he's been absent a lot. I agree with that. He has been. So I said, okay, what happens when he stays after school? Because I'm a very nosy parent. I like to know what happens with my kids at every single moment. And the lady that spoke to me on the phone from Ashby Lee, she said she really didn't know. And I don't know, does not sit well with me as a parent. I was like, okay, so is it in a group setting? Is he with one teacher? Are there multiple students from the whole school in one room? Like, what happens? Because as a kindergartner, in my mind, how much can you really be missing at school? I mean, you have your letter and number of the week, but other than that, they don't have homework to do. So, also saying that he did have all 3s on his last report card, so he was exceeding, his little special self in kindergarten. So I was just met with a whole bunch of I don't know. So I elected not to let him stay after school for the time being, just because I don't feel comfortable, because I don't, as a parent, don't have enough information to allow him to stay after school comfortably. I ask questions, he's a nosy little thing too, and he has a lot of questions, and he won't take, hey, you're just gonna stay after school and run with that. That won't work for him. We did have a round with this whole thing, policy was implemented last year. The second semester of the school year, my son only went to triplet tech, and he did have an autoimmune disease, chronic illness, 504, everything on plan, and they actually told him that he needed to stay after to make up classes. He didn't have any classes that semester, or he might be losing the chance to walk across the stage to get his diploma. Needless to say, my son elected not to do it anyway, because obviously at that point he's like, it's not about me and me not having good grades or not being here. This isn't about that. This is about something else. They already kept him from getting his driver's license his whole high school career, but that's a whole nother trajectory there. My question is, if there is someone with special needs, is there someone there after school that will take care of the kids if they have a 504 plan, like a school nurse? Thank you.
Cheyenne, is it Schechtel?
Schechtel.
Schechtel, thank you.
Good evening, members of the school board, parents, and community. My name is Cheyenne Schechtel, and I live here in Woodstock with my family. We have 2 boys, ages 8 and 9, who attend Robinson Elementary. We moved to Shenandoah County 2 years ago, settling in quietly to a cul-de-sac after coming from a much busier area with townhomes and rows of neighbors that we barely knew. In our previous neighborhood, our boys could not play outside without constant supervision. However, after moving here, we found ourselves in a safe and welcoming community where our children were able to ride bikes, draw with chalk, and explore outdoor activities freely. One of the first friends they made was a little girl who lived 2 doors down from us. She was kind, polite, and immediately made them feel welcome, even introducing them to other children in the neighborhood. Before we knew it, our children had their own group of friends and a sense of belonging here in Shenandoah County. This transition helped them with their new school, built their confidence, and inspired them to participate in more community activities. This includes Little League, swim team over the summer, and basketball. All of this was made possible because of the little girl with her kindness and friendship. Now, I'm going to ask you, why does this matter? Because this polite, genuine, and caring child is a transgender student here in Shenandoah County. And to be completely honest, I had no idea at first. After multiple interactions with her, nothing changed. She was polite and kind and respectful to our boys. And at this point, being transgender was never an issue. Her actions spoke for themselves. Now I ask you all a question, and this is not rhetorical. How many of you personally know a transgender person? Now keep your hand raised if they're actually your friends and family. Now keep your hand raised if they have negatively impacted you on an actual personal level, and I'm not talking about potentially affecting you. Who has actually harmed you? I can tell you that I know many transgender individuals in my life, and they are well-educated, employed, tax-paying citizens who have contributed positively to our community. They are people I trust around my children. They are role models who care for them and influence the generation in a meaningful way. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same about certain adults who sit here tonight. I would never allow my children to be around grown adults who fixate on children's identities and genitals in such an inappropriate way. This discussion of children's personal matters in such a public forum with language that is mischaracterizing and vilifying them is what I consider deeply troubling. Too many of us parents have seen this as a red flag. As a mother, my priority is my children's safety, well-being, and the ability to grow in a community with kindness and respect. I urge you to remember why we're here, and that is to create a well-rounded, kind, and supportive environment. Every child deserves respect, dignity, and the opportunity to be themselves without fear. This is the community I want for my children, and I hope that you all as well.
Mike Shivey?
Good evening, School Board and Dr. Shepard. And I forgot it was School Board Appreciation Month, so I appreciate all of you and the time you put in. But I stand before you tonight as a father and a concerned member of our community who really cares deeply about the future of education for our children in Shenandoah County. At the core of our educational system lies a fundamental truth, and that is our primary focus should be on the betterment of education and the well-being of the students, rather than nationally spotlighted political ideologies or concerns. Education is the bedrock upon which we build our society. It is the key to unlocking the potential within each child, guiding them towards a brighter future. When we prioritize things that are more national, we might lose focus on what is really going on within our schools right now, and I think that is a mistake. Losing sight of what really truly matters is our students, that is once again a mistake. The classroom should be primarily focused on learning, and I think that anything ideological or partisan debates that are going nationally don't belong there yet. Let the higher areas, figure that out before we jump forward with different things in Shenandoah County. So our students come to us with diverse backgrounds, beliefs, experiences, but it's our duty to create an environment where they all have their needs supported, and that includes funding of mental health things where it comes through, because whether we like it or not, schools are asked to do social work and have to deal with mental health issues where they haven't over in the past. It's an increasing number of things, and schools, we need funding. This is a message to our Board of Supervisors and everything. We need more student support specialists, and we also need to focus on education here. I mean, if I take a look on social media or what's going on in most of the comments here, we're not talking about funding. We're not talking about CIP needs. We're talking about things that are, might be in the classroom some, but they don't affect the majority of the children. So I think that we might be losing sight of that a little bit. Not that these matters aren't important, but they should not take our focus and concentration away from continuing the improvement of education in Shenandoah County. So in conclusion, the board, I hope that you guys can, put aside all of our collective differences a little bit and just focus on what's key, and that is every single student in our schools. Thank you.
Caitlin Johnson.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Johnson. My pronouns are she, her. I have 2 stepkids in school in Shenandoah County, one whom is transgendered. Recent comments made by certain school board members show that they have misunderstood the factual difference between sex and gender. They think that sex determines gender, effectively making them synonyms for the same thing. This is not correct. Sex is a physical characteristic. Most people are male or female, but a small number of people a small number of people are born with characteristics of both, so even that simple distinction turns out to not be so simple in real life. Gender is a physiological characteristic. Most people's innate identity as a man or woman happens to align with their physical sex. Most men were born male, most women were born female, but for a small part of the population, this isn't true. The core of human identity develops at a very young age. Many transgender people had a very clear understanding of the difference between their gender and their physical sex at a young age. Despite their efforts to force their mind to conform to their physical situation, they could not change who they were any more than any of us could. My son, for example, knows he was born biologically a female, or that his sex is female. But his gender, he identifies as male. He understands the difference and knows how painful it can be to not be himself. When a child tells us who they are, we should listen. We should get them the appropriate professional care to evaluate whether they are experiencing something that is gender-related or something else. However, if the child is transgendered, then allowing them to socially transition at a young age can prevent years of trauma and even save the child from self-harm or self-hatred caused by trying to conform to expectations of society that are impossible to achieve. I have seen the difference with my own eyes, how acceptance, love, and simply allowing a child to be themselves can uplift them, bring them peace, joy, and dignity that everyone deserves. To properly take care of these children, the school must accept them for who they are and not punish them for not fitting into an overly simplistic view of biology, especially in a setting where all should be cared for equally. This is why the January change to policy INB on teaching about controversial subjects must be removed. It makes transgender students officially invisible to the school by not allowing staff to even acknowledge their existence. Trans children have always and will always exist. The proposed change that is in this month's agenda corrects some of that. This policy has no place in a school system that cares about all its students. It should be removed. The same reasoning applies to the proposed change to the policy GBAB/JFHAB, removing the text that codifies how parents can instruct the school on the names and pronouns for their children. It takes a clear policy and replaces it with silence. How will the schools handle these situations in the future? We don't know because the school policy will give no guidance. The reason claimed for the change does not fit the solution. Instead of modifying the policy to handle a special case, the school board proposed to throw it out. The only reason for this change is to make it harder for parents to make sure their children are taken care of properly, which is not right and should not be approved. Thank you.
Is it Jane Kane? Thank you.
Good evening, members of the school board. Most of us have never had to question our gender. Our sense of self is in alignment with our bodies. That makes it hard to understand and believe it when someone tells us their own gender is different than their physical sex. However, we must believe them. When we do not, we put their lives at risk and deny the reality of their own existence. Harm comes from attempting to force them into a system that pretends there are only two possible ways for people to exist and is a denial of what actually happens in real people. And while that reality makes some people uncomfortable, it does not give them the right to discriminate against people who have done nothing wrong except to be born differently from most of the population. This board must not be influenced by claims based on willfully incorrect understanding of biology. If this board were to take a biology test in their own high school, they would probably flunk it if they believe that interpretation is correct. To do so is to hurt these children. Policy should be based on knowledge that human biology and psychology are complex, and that humanity exists on a spectrum, and that spectrum must be respected. Thank you.
Billy Mullins.
Good evening, Superintendent Shepard, Chairman Barlow, Vice Chair Gushaw, and the rest of the board members. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak on this important matter. As someone who is guided by biblical principles, I feel called to address the topic of children's understanding of gender identity from a faith-based perspective. Scripture teaches us that God created us male or female, and that children are a heritage from the Lord. As we're instructed to train up a child in the way they should go, I believe we have a sacred responsibility to provide clear, loving guidance during these formative years. Young children are still developing their understanding of the world and of themselves. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that there is a time for everything, including a time for children to grow in wisdom and stature as Jesus did. I believe introducing these complex concepts about gender identity before children have developed the spiritual and emotional maturity to process them may lead them away from the divine design that God intended. And I believe that's why we see so much confusion. As Christians, we're called to speak truth in love. While we must show compassion to all children and their parents, we must also be faithful to biblical teachings about God's created order. Parents are given the primary responsibility to instruct their children in the ways of the Lord, and our schools should respect this God-given authority. So I humbly ask that the school board consider policies that honor biblical truth while treating all students with the dignity they deserve as bearers of God's image. Let us create an environment where children can grow in accordance with biblical principles, allowing them to embrace their God-given identity as male or female. And my prayer is that we may be guided by wisdom from above, that we make decisions that will impact the spiritual and emotional well-being of our children. I pray that we may find a path that upholds biblical values while ensuring that all students are treated with love and respect that Christ modeled for us. Thank you for your consideration.
Our last speaker is Stephen Heischman.
Good evening, school board members, Chairman Barlow, Dr. Shepard. Thank you all for what you do on this school board in Shenandoah County. Congratulations to all the students that received the music awards this evening. That's always exciting to see their achievements. I have to continuously give a shout out to weekday religious education that has recently added the 5th grade, so it's now grades 2 through 5, and as they get started back up here on about February the 24th, there are 10 5th graders that have enrolled, taken the enrollment number up to about 162 students. And that is nothing but positive in the world of challenges that these children have today. We have heard some of the comments and concerns from other folks. Anytime they can get exposed to the life of Christ and what He did for us on that tree that day on Calvary, it is always a good thing. There will be, I'm throwing in a plug here, there will be a bluegrass concert to benefit the weekday religious education program on Saturday, March the 29th at 4:30 at Antioch Church of the Brethren out here on Route 42. The artist performing that evening will be the Larry Stevenson Band and Five of a Kind. That's a local group. I'd also like to give I have been here for a couple meetings, a late congratulations to recently the Shenandoah County football players that were chosen to play in the recent Valley League All-Star game. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Concludes our public comments. Is there anybody else who wanted to take the floor? All right, we'll move on. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items as put forth this evening?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Gutschall and seconded by Mr. Rickard that we accept that we approve the consent agenda as it has been presented to us. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed? So that takes us to the instructional agenda. And Dr. Shepard, do you have somebody who's going to tell us all about this?
Certainly. Our first presentation is by Ms. Stratton. She's going to talk about annual child count for special education services. Ms. Stratton?
Good evening, Chairman Barlow, board members, Dr. Shepard. Tonight I'm here to discuss with you the child count for 2024. We'll go through the reason for the child count and what our numbers are. So as you can see up there on the board, it talks about the purpose of the December 1 child count. This ensures that we receive our appropriate federal funding to support special education services. So all of this reporting that we do is unduplicated student count, which actually means a student may have a primary disability, a secondary disability, or a tertiary disability. However, we only count the student one time under the primary disability. And the IDEA Part B is students ages 3 to 21, up to their 22nd birthday. The students that are counted must have the 3 criteria listed. They must have a current evaluation or a reevaluation, also known as a triennial evaluation, which is every 3 years. They must have a valid IEP, which is an individualized education program, or an ISP, which is an individual service plan, which means a student may be homeschooled who receives services or qualifies for those services, or private school. That's the ISP. And they should and will have to be receiving special education services with or without related services. Related services could be physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy, and so on. Here's our numbers for the December 2024 under each disability category. And everyone has a copy of this, so you'll be able to look at your numbers. As you can see, the total number is 884 students at December 1 that are eligible under IDEA for special education services. You'll see a little bit of a difference as Dr. Shepard tells you when she reports out on her numbers. Our numbers for actual enrollment's a little different because we go off of October 1st for our day of checking to see how many students are enrolled. So we go from October 1st, that amount of students that are enrolled in our schools. And then we look at our total number of students with disabilities at December 1, and then we come up with our percentage from there. Here's the 5-year trend. We're pretty steady, as you can see. About 15.2% this year is where we are. Went down a little bit in numbers. That could be from students leaving, graduating, and so that can fluctuate, or students found eligible. Those numbers are high. 15.2% is well over what the state really wants you to have and the federal government wants you to have. So we just have to be very clear to make sure that we're looking at those numbers and the disabilities. So questions? I will say that Mr. Rickert attended one of our special education advisory committee meetings, and he did advise and explain to everyone that I have an open door policy. I would love for you to come in and ask specific questions if you'd like to, and we can go through all of the eligibility criteria, things that look like how a student is qualified. So if you'd like to do that individually.
It was very eye-opening. Before I ask my question, I'd like to point out what you were just making a point of to the parents of any kids with IEPs, 504s. They are welcome to attend the meeting, and we would love to have them.
The next meeting is March 19th at 5:30, the school board, second floor.
The only question off the top of my head right now, Ms. Ingreo, I think, asked about it earlier, the after-school program. Is there somebody in that class to help with 504 or IEP?
So understanding the difference between IDEA and 504. 504 are students that are under the general education population. They're not serviced by a special education teacher. They have possibly a medical plan for some reasons that they may need that, and our general education teachers fulfill those accommodations. Special education, if there is not someone that's there, the case managers do provide information to the teacher who is staying after school for any type of support that they would need.
Thank you. Once again, I'd just like to encourage involvement with the special education committee meetings. I learned a lot just in that one time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for attending.
Quick question, because you just mentioned that the number of 15.2% of students that live above state and federal, is there a reason why? What's your assessment of why that is?
Why we are...
I mean, is it that we assess better? Is it that we have more needs in the community? Or what?
I think it can be a little bit of both. Absolutely, though, we want to make sure that we are bringing every student to the table if we suspect a disability, and we will evaluate those students. And if they qualify, they're going to qualify if our numbers go up or not. We are just going to do what's best for kids. And if that's what we need to do, that's what we'll do. They try to keep it in between 10% and 13% is kind of where they want us to lie in there. But again, if the students are eligible, we're going to find them eligible.
Now, is that just follow-up? Because as you know, this is a big
Sure.
learning curve for me. Is this something that they're expecting that some of the kids are gonna move on? That they're gonna, they're thinking that to keep the numbers lower, we'll be able to graduate the kids from that, or is that just something that once the kid is in there, usually it's gonna stay throughout the school?
They don't. We have a lot of students. That's the whole idea of the triennial reviews, the reevaluations, that we definitely want to evaluate those students and to see if that success is meeting those needs, so we can move them out if need be. Yes. But if they're not ready, they're not ready. If they still need specially designed instruction, we're going to provide specially designed instruction. It's not about the numbers. It's about doing what's best for the kids.
Thank you.
May I ask one more question? Ms. Trotner, I thought, touched on it. And I'm going back years, but is it correct that if a parent requests that we test their child, we have to do that?
We should absolutely. We should absolutely. Now, it's not a requirement because they go to student support team meeting. And so we look at all of the data. However, you want to err on the correct way to find out, to do a full evaluation. And we have always, as far as I know, gone through with a full evaluation. However, we have response to intervention first. We want to make sure that we're not quickly putting a student in to have a label of a disability if we haven't done any of those response to intervention pieces. So we do make sure that we are honing in on what's needed, do some of those different types of services within, like for a reading specialist, maybe providing some services to see if we can close the gap, just to make sure that it's just not that gap.
Did that used to be a requirement?
Well, it's never been a full requirement. We do make sure that we're testing students for that purpose. I'm not going to tell a parent, no, we're not going to evaluate because we haven't gone through the RTI process. We're going to evaluate, and then we'll find out, because we don't want to keep it hanging on and keep on just watching over the student for this month to the next month to the next month. We will evaluate.
Gotcha. Thank
Yes.
you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is there a way
You can talk to the lady on the way back there.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to the informational agenda. And we're going to pick up the superintendent's budget.
So the budget books are at your table or at your place. So please, I will be referencing page numbers as we go through this slide presentation. And you also have flags that I handed out earlier in case you want to flag something to look at later. So I'm going to start with the page 13 in the budget book. This is the budget development calendar, and just want to go through a few of these items. The General Assembly is scheduled to conclude on February 22nd, and once the General Assembly concludes, we will have a better understanding and idea of our state revenue, what revenue we can expect from the state. So until we have that information, the estimate for what we're going to request from the county is just an estimate at this point. But once we find out what our state revenue is going to be, then that will help us out with our request from the county, our locality. At the February 24 school board meeting, the school board should come with their input on what they would like to see in the budget. A little later on, we're going to talk about those things that I am recommending, and then we're also going to talk about CIP. So it's going to be very important that you come with your input on February the 24th. So then when we come to the March 13th school board meeting, the school board is ready to approve a budget for fiscal year 2026. Also mark your calendars for March the 17th at 1 o'clock, because that is when the Board of Supervisors and School Board will meet in a work session to discuss the school board budget. April 15th, the Board of Supervisors will adopt the tax rate and fiscal year 2026 budget, and then on April the 28th, the school board will adopt its final budget with input from the Board of Supervisors. So on page 21, you will see that Shenandoah County Public Schools continues to be the #1 employer in Shenandoah County, and we have been for the last 10 years the #1 employer in Shenandoah County. On page 22, you will see, at the bottom of page 21, you will see the number of administrators, supervisors, teachers, and support staff that share the responsibility of making Shenandoah County Public Schools function. And then below that are the additional positions that we are requesting. So they're there. We will talk about this a little later again. And then on page 22, you will notice our staffing. And if you look under the proposed staffing for 2026, or you look at the staffing for this year, you will notice that there are some decimals there. And so I'll just give you an example. For principal, there's 9.75 principal. So how do we have 0.75 principal? That is actually our CTE, director of CTE, and he's also the principal of Triplet Tech. So he's 0.75 as a principal, and then 0.25 as a director. So that will kind of tell you that how that works. Also, we have employees that work less than full time, and they may be counted as 0.75, 0.5, 0.86, whatever. So that'll give you some of your decimal numbers. But if you have any questions about that, I know Ms. Campbell is able to answer those questions.
Are those all employees?
Those are our employees, yes. So our budget priorities fall under 3 of our strategic plan goals. And those 3 goals are academic achievement and growth, recruit, support, and retain enthusiastic professionals, and high quality and adequate facilities and learning environment. So those are the three goals that our budget request will fall under, and we will hear more about that here in a minute. And that is on page 30. Page 27 through page 29 actually outlines our budget practices, so policies and practices. So if you want more information about how our accounting policies and practices or what funds we have, you will see that on page 27, 28, and 29. So before we move on to the financial section, are there any questions?
I do have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about like all the employees and that number, is that only, I mean, I'm sure that's what it is, but all the employees that we employed, so it doesn't count in contractors that we may be hiring for?
It's our employees.
Do we have a different area for contractors, or?
So we don't count contractors at all. Mm-hmm. No. All right, so financial information. On page 35, you will see our proposed budget. With the information that we have currently regarding our state revenue, the current proposed request for local funds is $1.279 million in operational funds, in operating funds, and $6.5 in capital funds. I believe as we work through our capital funds, that will decrease a little, but that's our current ask at this point. On February 24th, the school board will make decisions on our capital projects, which capital projects we should move forward with. And if you look at page 38, that details the anticipated revenue for fiscal year 2026 as detailed on this slide. For example, Fund 1, our operating fund, is $85.4 million in revenue. Our Fund 2, which are our special budgets, $5.6 million. Fund 3, capital, $9.8. Fund 5, food service, $4.3 million. And then county technology, $540,000. I know this is small, but you can see it on page 38 and 39. These are the major classifications for expenditures, and we use 7 out of the 9 of these classifications. The 2 classifications that we do not use are debt and contingency reserves. We use instruction, administration, attendance and health, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, food service, school food service, facilities, and technology. And the next slide will show the funds that we use and the money that we are that has been adopted in what we are proposing for those funds. And you can see that on page 40. right, so a couple of times I've alluded to budget initiatives. There's a lot more information in that financial section if you want to look at it, but I just hit the highlights there. So feel free to ask questions as you go through it. I'm available. Ms. Campbell's available to answer any questions that you may have. So if you will look at page 41, down towards the halfway down the bottom of the page, that's the highlight of our budget initiatives. And you can see that the first goal that we've focused on is academic achievement and growth. And we're asking for new instructional positions in Fund 1. And that will be 4 English learner teachers. And this is to align with the standards of quality requirements that we have. You will see 1 full-time middle school teacher to support increased enrollment at Peter Muhlenberg Middle School. 2 full-time paraprofessionals, 1 for students with disabilities and 1 for additional support in Strasburg High School Library. 4 bus drivers to reduce the double runs that we have at some of our schools. 3 student support specialists. And then on the next page, page 42, we've had several grants very similar to our CARES fund. So right now we're working under the All in Virginia grant, and we have 1 assistant principal that is funded at Ashby Lee out of the All in Virginia funds. We had 0.5 of a health sciences teacher that was paid for by the Claude Moore grant. And then 1 English language learner teacher, which was paid by one of our title programs, Title I. And then many of our software packages have been paid through All in Virginia, and that money is going away. We have to spend it next year is the last year, but it is dwindling fairly quickly. And then down at the very bottom, you'll see Launch New Aviation CTE program. There will be no local dollars required for this new aviation program. It's through a public-private partnership that we will be able to implement this program. We have the money in there so that it can be allocated and we don't have to go back and request additional funding from the Board of Supervisors. But the public-private partnership is actually going to pay for all of the equipment, which is about $200,000 for this program. It will pay for a half-time teacher for the very first year of the program, and then another partnership will actually pay for flights for the students who are enrolled in this program. So looking forward to implementing that new program this year with this new partnership we have. Yeah, so very exciting. So the next goal that we're looking at is high quality and adequate facilities and learning environment. You'll see capital funding. We'll talk about that here in a minute, really in great detail. But these are our urgent and necessary items from the proposed CIP budget. You'll notice below that for Fund 1 is inflation and increased services cost. And this, the increase in student enrollment has increased funding needs at Peter Muhlenberg Middle School. Inflation of cost of materials at Triplet Tech, so like the food that we serve in our culinary program, the cost has increased. Our equipment for our carpentry class or our electricity class, all of that has increased. And then also we need to fund the software that our new bus cameras were purchased this year. So we have to fund the software that is going to be, and that's an annual fee that is attached to those new cameras. And then the last goal is recruit, support, and retain enthusiastic professionals. And you will see the very first item under there is targeted scale adjustments So one of the things we would like to do is adjust bus driver salaries to align the base salary with the increased contracted hours. So the base salary is only good for that 3-hour driver, it doesn't align with a 3.5, 4, 4.5, or 5-hour driver. So we want to align that with that, and then regrade the athletic directors to align with the high school assistant principals. We want to offer our dual enrolled teachers a stipend of $500 for any teacher who teaches a dual enrolled class. They have to have a higher level degree in order to be able to teach these classes, and we want to incentivize teachers to be able to get the credentials that they need in order to teach a dual enrolled class. So incentivizing them with $500 per class hopefully will encourage more of our high school teachers to become dual enrolled certified. Compensation increase. This is the 3%, 3.16% cost of living adjustment, or the step plus cost of living adjustment. So this is which they equal the same amount of money, which is $2.691 million. And then our allocation for health insurance increase at $1 million. The anticipated increase for health insurance is 12%. And we would also like to increase our division contribution for employees and family so that can decrease a little more. And I'm going to go to the next slide, but then I'll head back in just a minute. You can see the very top chart there is 22-23. And then you'll see 23-24, and you'll see 24-25. And I am just going to highlight here our employee plus family. We have made great gains over the last 3 years on our employee plus family health insurance rates. We went from $1,250 to $913 to $803. So we have decreased health insurance rates for our employees plus family by about $450 over the last 3 years, and we really still need to do a little work. We compare ourselves with Frederick and Rockingham County, which is where we lose most of our staff to, and we still have a little work to do on that family plan. So we will be working on that hopefully again this year. We should have finalized health insurance rates either at the February 24th meeting, we're trying to get it for that, or at the March 13th meeting. So we should know at that point where we are with health insurance at that point. And then in the chart at the bottom, it just shows our employee coverages, our employee costs for our different types of coverage. So you have your Key Care 1000 with preventative dental, comprehensive dental. We have the Key Care 250, which is a little more expensive, but if people may choose that because it's a lower deductible, and if they have health care concerns, then they may want to go with the 250 plan. And then we have our high deductible plan. So I'm going to scroll back really quick. And our total potential request from the locality is $1.279 million. So $1,279,709. However, there are some additional things that we would like for you to consider. And they fall under the goal of recruit, support, and retain enthusiastic professionals. So one of the things that we've been talking about is a retention or sign-on stipend for our special ed teachers, and that would be a $2,500 stipend for our special ed teachers. We started the year with 4 vacancies in special ed, and we still have 3, and we have a number of teachers who are working on their certification in special ed. So to implement that $2,500 retention sign-on stipend would be $180,000. If we did that for school counselors, it would be $52,000. And we started the school year with 6 vacancies in school counseling, and we still have 6 vacancies in school counseling. So those are 2 of our harder to fill positions, special ed and school counselors. And then the last bullet there is a $2,500 retention longevity stipend for all staff with 20 plus years of experience. And that would be $450,000. So those are, those are just some ideas of how we lose staff when they get, 10 plus years of experience, but we want to honor our staff who have been with Shenandoah County Public Schools, and that is a way that we can honor those staff, and hopefully they would stay with us. Okay, so I've went through quite a bit just now. So any questions about any of the asks or any of the requests? Yes, Mike?
That stipend for special ed teachers, we talked about this not too long ago. Our teachers that are certified in special ed but do not teach special ed, would that be available to them if they came back to special ed?
Certainly. It would be anyone who was a special ed teacher, yes.
Thank you.
Quick question. So for the compensation increase that the governor has signed, is he providing funds for that, or is that an unfunded mandate?
He is providing funds for that, but the funds that the locality always has to chip in, because the locality is required for this much of a match, and then the state requires this much of a match. So there's always a little bit of funds that the locality has to put towards, and the governor has set a 3%, and I've noticed in the House and the Senate at this point it's a 3%, but I believe both the House and the Senate have indicated a bonus. Is that right? A one-time bonus.
So this is the match. So it would be really twice as much that is needed for that, right? So is that amount the actual match from our side?
No, that's the actual. That's
total.
That's the actual amount, state and local. Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
Well, we would have to give us only half.
Yeah. So really. Let me go to the number.
It's like 2 million.
Yeah. The number right now that we're asking from the locality for all of the things that are in the top part, not the 3 at the bottom, not the retention sign-on stipends, but everything that we've asked for above that was 1.279 million from the locality.
So we're not.
So we're not asking.
2 million. Yeah, that's what I'm working on. Okay.
No. That's the total that we would be requesting increase from the locality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the long-term CIP, and we were treated to the 3 alternative care. That has not been decided upon, correct?
No,
okay.
Correct.
And so when we decide on that, it certainly will have an impact on this, will it not?
So this is operating funds. The CIP is separate.
Okay, so.
Yes.
Any other questions on the superintendent's proposed budget?
I have a few more slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, just about 50 more slides.
50? Okay. Well,
no, not really. So just a little more information. So here's the operational budget. This is what we've come up with that we're going to need to operate Shenandoah County Public Schools in the next year, and I don't have my glasses on, but it looks like it is 86 million. Oh, there it is, $86 million. So that is on page 46 in your book. So that's the proposed operating funds. And then if you will flip to page 48, you will see the state revenue that we're expecting, and this is based on the governor's biennial budget, second year of the biennial budget. And then you also see what we have received from the county over the last few years. Please, the fiscal year 2026, we haven't added the 1.279. We want to wait until after we get this finalized state number before we actually say this is exactly what we need from the county, the locality. And you guys may have some input at the February 24th meeting where we can update that number as well. So this is a slide that you see in all of the budget presentations, and it's how much money are we spending on instruction, and it's about 75% here. And you'll see attendance, advanced health is a little less than 6%, transportation's about 8%, operations and maintenance is 8.5%, and then technology is 2.8%. That slide is found on page 50, and then that chart is found on page 50. This graph is found on page 51, and this is broken down in a different way. And I always like to point out that our personnel and benefits are about 89% of our budget. So the majority of our budget is people. All right, so capital improvement. So facilities at a glance, you've seen this before. It shows the year, it shows capacity, shows all of that information. And that is not included in your budget book. That is included in your capital improvement plan. And you'll see the capital improvement funding over the last 10, 12 years. You will notice that in fiscal year 23, there was 0 request and 0 funded, and that was because we had received money from the county. I think it was a little over, it was $4.225 million, and we were also spending our CARES funds around $10 million on capital projects. So that year we were completing a lot of projects and we were spending CARES funds on capital projects, so we didn't request. But the other years you'll see what we requested and what was funded. What was requested is in a dark blue line, and what was funded is lighter blue. The next slide, this is one of the options you have seen over the last couple of months, and I'm hoping at the February 24th meeting we can decide on which draft long-term facilities plan we want to go with. This is option A, and you can see how it breaks down the projects. There's option B, and then there's an option C. So hopefully at our February 24th work session, we could come to some type of agreement on this. We want to go with this option in order to do a long-term facilities plan. And then the capital projects that are listed in your capital improvement plan, they're broken down here by necessary and urgent. You can see safety and security is this first slide. And then safety and security again. And these are the projects that are listed for fiscal year 26. And the total for safety and security is $276,000, and you'll notice urgent is $145,000. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, again, urgent and necessary. And the total for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning is $385,000, and the urgent is $375,000. Roofing, we will have an updated roofing price at the February 24th meeting. The updated roofing price we received today, I think it was $530,000. So it's a little more expensive than what is there, but we want to make sure we have as accurate information as we can. So we'll update that for February 24th. You'll see doors and locks, and then other projects. And 2 of the other projects you won't see on here, but we'll have numbers for you for the February 24th meeting, is an estimate on the replacing of carpet with LVT flooring at all levels of school, so elementary, middle, and high school. And then we'll also include a fence at Ashby Lee Elementary School for the playground. So those are numbers that aren't included in these capital projects, but we will update that, and you will have them by February the 24th. So just scrolling through there, these are all of the projects for this year, and we will take a deep dive here on February the 24th. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if there's things that you want to change on this, now's the time to do it, because March the 13th is when it actually gets approved for submittal to the Board of Supervisors. Happy to answer any questions on our capital projects. Transportation, sorry I missed a few. Athletics. Any questions? Any questions?
Only 37 slides.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that presentation. There's a lot that's happened in the last couple of weeks, so good stuff. We're in the informational agenda portion, and we have come to 5.2, which is policy INB, and we're going to get an update from Dr. Shepard.
Yes. So at the January 9th school board meeting, the school board approved amendments to policy INB, teaching about controversial issues. School board member, Mr. Street, requested a revision to the policy to allow school administrators, counselors, student support specialists, social workers, and psychologists to respond to student inquiries about gender and gender identity in age-appropriate, factual, and neutral matter. This is being presented for information tonight. We will discuss it at the March 13th school board meeting.
And so the draft policy as it sits now is there, but the policy that has been passed is also there. So is the vote there.
Correct.
And discussion will occur at our work session. Okay. Next item is the library book review announcement. Dr. Shepard.
Yes, this is the announcement. A parent requested a review of library book The Very Smart Pea and the Princess to Be by Minnie Gray. Following the review process, the committee voted 5-1 in favor of retaining the book in general library circulation, determining that it was age appropriate for elementary students. In accordance with policy KLBLB, Public Review of Learning Resources, Library Books, once a library book review process is completed, the superintendent announces the committee's decision. This serves as the official public announcement for the book review of The Very Smart Pea and the Princess to Be, requested by April Warner and held on Wednesday, January 22nd. After careful consideration, the review committee voted to maintain the book in the general library circulation.
Thank you. 5.4, school board norms.
So attached to this agenda item are the current school board norms as well as a draft document highlighting all of the proposed modifications. The draft school board norms will be presented as an informational item this evening, and there will be an opportunity for discussion at the school board work session on Monday, February 24th.
Thank you. Dr. Heingartner, we've had some more questions about the attendance policy, and you're probably going to make us a little smarter about it.
Dr. Heingartner.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Barlow, members of the board, and Dr. Shepard. Thanks. So I'm calling on, asking my trustee sidekick, Deb Litton, if she can join me. Debbie works behind the scenes at putting the numbers together and make sure all of our attendance reporting is accurate. So she's going to kind of give you the nuts and bolts, but I did want to mention two things before we get going. One, there was some question about the term poor school standing and using that. And so we looked at that and discussed that, and we're going to shift to term of chronic attendance improvement. And we felt like calling it exactly what it is so that people understood, exactly what you're talking about. It's not kind of gray or foggy. So instead of using the poor school standing terminology, we'll use chronic attendance improvement. And then the second thing I think that's probably more important to folks is, after talking with the administrators in our last month's principals meeting, we talked about shifting away from a percentage-based time approach to a straight numbers approach. So we moved with eight days in first semester, 7 days second semester, or a total of 15 days for the school year. Those are the targets that would then, administrators would be asking students to attend. Now, of course, as I mentioned once before, any student can attend any time in the ASAP program, regardless of whether you've missed any days or not. But those would be the days we're trying to keep attendance 15 days or less for students for the year. So I'll let Ms. Litton kind of share with you some data. Might give you a little more insight into the program. Thank you, Ms. Litton. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Heimgartner. Chairman Barlow, members of the board, Dr. Shepard. Just want to give you some numbers to look at on our after-school attendance program, also called the ASAP program. It was established in January of 2024 when we opened it up to middle and high school students. It's also referred to the in-person flexible instructional time program. And this all came down from the Virginia Department of Education. Regulations in September of this year, 2024, outlined it for elementary school. So this year it's across the board, K-12. The purpose of the program is to augment all of the activities that we do every year to improve our attendance. Students can't learn if they're not in school. We want students in school so that they can be academically successful. And all of this is funded through the Virginia Department of Education, through the All In Virginia grant that Dr. Shepard had mentioned earlier. And that pays for the teachers who are providing the after-school instruction. The criteria is that if a K through 5 student must attend 2 hours after school, grades 6 through 12 attend 3 hours after school, and 1 day of absence is reduced with each session that you stay. And a student can only reduce 15 total absences. So you'll see that 15 is kind of reverberated throughout the program. The Virginia Department of Education runs the calculations at the end of the year and adjusts our chronic absenteeism rate, and that publishes that out at the end of the year. But chronic absenteeism percentage for each school, we want to be 15% or less. So you're chronically absent if you miss 10% of the school year, which is really hard to track because as you start the school year, you haven't been there that many days. So you may be chronically absent at the beginning of the school year, but you're not later on because you've been in school more days, and so it takes away that 10%. But the school division, the school itself is looking at 15% as that percentage. So what has been the impact of the ASAP program at our high school level? You can see there, I went ahead and did the 22-23 because there was no ASAP program at that time. 23-24 was only half a year. And then I'm giving you the totals of first semester this year. So you can see how each of the high schools, the impact that ASAP program made in those percentages. It is noted that the chronic absenteeism is the only factor that prevented Strasburg High School from being fully accredited in the 23-24 school year, fully accredited for the numbers before. So that was the only thing that they did not have a green check on. So attendance matters.
A quick question
Yes.
regarding that slide. So are those the kids who are actually attending a session, or are those the kids who are absent whether they attended a session or not?
That is the chronic absentee percentage for that school for that year. So Central High School at the end of the year, the 22-23 school year, was 30.3%. Very far away from the 15% that is our goal, or less.
But that's regardless of whether they attended the ASAP, because the ASAP.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
You have it right. Before that.
The point of the numbers is to show the decline of chronic
Absenteeism, yeah. It's the chronic absenteeism rate.
If Central and Strasburg had the same percentage,
Okay.
how come Strasburg was the only one not accredited?
Yeah, that's a good catch. And I had the same question. And when I investigated, Central and Stonewall were accredited on a 3-year average that year. Strasburg wasn't that fortunate. And that's the reason why, because I wondered the same thing. And that's a great example. Just leave it quiet.
I know, you're good.
That's a great example of there's always a story in the numbers. You can't just look at the numbers and think, there's always a story and a reason behind what things are the way they are.
So when you think of a 3-year average, there were 2 previous years where Central High School averaged to be, had good attendance. They met their requirement. But Strasburg High School did not.
At the middle school, you can see the same thing. There's their chronic absenteeism percentages each year. So again, you can see each year the ASAP program is helping reduce the chronic absenteeism rate at the middle school level. And then again, if you remember, here's the elementary school, 22, 23, 23, 24, they did not have the ASAP program. That's what their percentages were, and this is what the percentages are now with the ASAP program for this year, 24, 25. So it's definitely impactful to our schools. And just to give you some session numbers, this is the number of students who are staying. Now, it's not individualized students. It's every time they have a session, how many kids stayed. And so this just is the total number. I could have had 3 sessions at this school, and 5 of those kids stayed for all 3 sessions. But they get counted because it's how many kids are coming at each session. So you can see that students are taking advantage of the program. It is part of our attendance process that we are talking to parents. Hey, have you thought about having your child stay for the ASAP program so that we can get the attendance down for your child? We want to use every opportunity that we can to help improve attendance and get our parents to be engaged and help with the process as well. So right now it's about a total of 1,100 total session numbers.
Sletton, if you can go back to the criteria slide, I think it was slide 2. One thing, just wanted to make mention, we've recently been informed that we're going to have to shift to a 3-hour time frame, even at the elementary level. So that was not the case earlier. That is the case now. And so that's a transition we're going to have to start communicating and start doing.
How are you going to keep a kindergartner engaged for 3 hours if there's one teacher with, say, 6 kids in the room?
So we've talked about.
We're not keeping them for 3 hours. That's impossible.
I mean, I've heard plenty of stories and I've got lots of questions.
So we haven't met with our principals yet about this. The next opportunity we'll meet with our principals. I think it's Tuesday.
Yes.
And we will discuss this. And but I don't. Is it a 2-hour session or is it 2 1.5-hour sessions? We don't know, but we got this information probably Thursday last week that this had changed kind of mid-year.
So am I understanding correctly, since we're getting away from the 10%, the whole dance thing or after-school activities, is that after you've missed 8 days in the first semester, that a student is missing after-school activities?
Right. That would be the time frame that they would be deemed chronically absent.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one parent reach out to me in particular about their student who has some mental health issues and has to miss for a mental health evaluation that takes all day. Is that excused, or?
The only thing that I know of right now that I'm not going to say is excused, but is not marked as an absence is if a student is in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in the hospital, it's not marked as an absence.
If we get
anything else
proper documentation to that effect.
So if a student is going to get tubes in their ears or tonsils taken out, they're not in the hospital, but it's outpatient procedure, and they're probably going to miss a few days after the fact. Those students, are they considered chronically absent?
Well, you're chronically absent when you miss 10% of your day, so it depends on the other absences that child has.
Well,
Because
I'm
it goes
just
by
talking
total.
about, let's say a student gets the flu during first semester, and then later during that semester, they have to get tubes in their ears or tonsils taken out, and they're missing over the 8 days. Are they having to serve ASAP program for that time?
Well, they would be eligible to, yeah. And they would be deemed chronically absent until they had fewer than that 10% of time.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank the good Lord above, my kids have never had issues making it to school. I just feel like we're getting a little bit out of touch with when we were in that position. Like the student that's got to go for the mental health evaluation, putting them in ASAP to sit there and read a book because they missed a day for a mental health evaluation. I don't know that that's doing much for their mental health.
So let me ask a further question and try to elaborate on that. First of all, I want to thank you for changing the word to chronic, because nobody wants a tag with being in the poor category. And I can understand why some people would recoil at that. You can look at this glass as being half full or half empty. If, for whatever reason, excused, unexcused, good, bad, I miss a week of Algebra 1, and I don't know how to do a quadratic equation, I'm either forever going to be behind, or I'm going to be given a chance to catch up. So I thank you for creating a program that allows somebody to catch up. And so I see it as a remedial program that allows students, good reason, bad reason, to get instruction that you talk about the old days, you probably wouldn't have gotten. You just catch up or fall behind, it's your choice. So I think that the school is performing a service there for those students. And I also think it recognizes, we put a lot of emphasis on trying to raise expectations, raise academic standards, and we've talked about things like cell phone impact, we talk about things like dress codes, behavior, discipline, and certainly attendance is a very good predictor of success, not only in school, but in life. And so it's tough because, as Mike suggests, there are people who missed school for entirely understandable and valid reasons, but they still need to catch up. Now, the discussion today about kindergarten and so forth is an interesting question to me, because I can understand how you try to catch up somebody in chemistry or biology or algebra and so forth, and why that might be a little bit difficult. And there might be some sort of, modification as we do this based on the academic rigor. But the whole idea of facing up to it and dealing with it is really a tough task that you guys have taken on. I'm not sure if we can ever do it, Dr. Shepard, but you're such a lover of data. It'd be interesting to know if we could ever if we could just suggest a measure of effectiveness by which the ASAP program has proven to be, an enhancer to a child's education. So anyway, that's, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So when you said that we're going to have to now do the 3 hours for the elementary, is that the state requiring this?
Yes.
And we have no say on this with regards to what we do for the elementary school kids. Like Ms. Barlow said, I can understand it for the high school students, but get a kindergartner and a first grader, that seems excessive.
And as Ms. Proctor said, I think we'll look for ways to manage that time differently, but the hours, 3 hours will equate to 1 day absence. So however, if they get that in 3 settings, or they get that in 1 setting, it's 3 hours will equate to 1 day absence.
Can we, can time in the playground be part of that? I don't understand what exactly we're doing in the program. Instruction.
Yes.
A.
Yeah. Well, there's defined criteria on what has to happen.
What happens if we don't do that?
Well, I think
is
we
that when
risk
accreditation comes into
That's
question?
Right. We risk accreditation by not meeting the chronic absenteeism standard.
And if Ms. Litton would go back I don't know if back or forth to the without, I think that's it. Without ASAP, then there's where our numbers were at our elementary levels. So you look at W.W. Robinson and Ashby Lee, even last year, they didn't make the 15% number.
You know, that's the frustration on our part. But the reality of it is exactly what Mr. Barlow said. Many students, I don't know how many, but I know that there are a number of students who stay, and they're not chronically absent. They stay to get the assistance, to get the help after school. And so I can't imagine that this is not going to help those students who are chronically absent, who stay and get caught up on their schoolwork.
No,
That's what's most important about it.
I've got to add on to what Chairman Barlow said. I thank you guys for doing this. It's a great program for the kids that want to take advantage of it. One more question that I've been asked by several parents is, could we possibly change the name of it? Because when they hear the term ASAP, I guess that's a term used for alcohol, substance abuse, when you get caught with DWI or something. And
Sure,
so
we'll change the name of it.
that's what I said. I'm like, but what I was getting, my mind was getting off topic. What I should have said when Chairman Barlow was talking about that, my first question to parents when they contact me about this is, hey, how are your kids' grades? You know, are they meeting? Are they getting A's and B's, or are they getting D's and F's? And so far, all but one said they've got a D in something. So I'm like, okay, you know, maybe that would help. But other than that, most of the parents are like, my kid's A, B. This doesn't gain them anything except to take away that absence. But yeah, a few parents have requested we change the acronym or the name for it. I got a little chuckle out of that.
I didn't realize that.
That's a good thing that you didn't recognize it.
Thank you.
Debbie is an acronym queen.
Yeah,
Very acronym.
and neither one of you knew this, so.
All right, our final informational agenda item is 5.7, which is the request to increase the fiscal year 25 special budget. And Ms. Campbell is approaching the microphone even as we speak.
Good evening, members of the board. What I have before you tonight is a request to increase the special budget in the current year, fiscal year 25. We received a school improvement grant for Ashby Lee Elementary School in the amount of $48,227.20. These are federal funds, they're reimbursable, they do not require a local match. We are requesting action tonight because we are hoping to support planned activities with regard to this grant. I'm happy to take any questions.
What is, go ahead. Go ahead.
What are the strings attached to it?
I'm going to turn to Ms. Proctor.
So it's not necessarily that there are strings attached to it, but there, we had to write a plan for the funds, and it is professional development that teachers are participating in after school to help improve their scores.
Thank you. Now we have 6 action items, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't take a short recess before we plunge in. Do I have a sense of the board as to whether we take a short recess? You drive off? Drive off?
I already used my restroom breaks.
Yeah, I know, you broke out here.
I'm good.
Okay, I'm hearing consensus that we move ahead, so we'll do so. Personnel, 6.1. Do we hear a motion to approve the personnel list as it has been presented to us earlier this evening?
I move to approve the personnel list as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschall. All in favor of accepting the personnel to be recommended to us, personnel matters? Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not opposed? Okay. 6.2. The proposed revision to policy GBAB/JFHAB privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Shenandoah County Public Schools. So I think we have background here. Do we have a recommended action on this policy?
I move to approve, to adopt policy, GBAB, JFHB, privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Shenandoah County Public Schools as presented, with the removal of sections 3.D.4 and 3.D.5. Section 3.D.6 will be renumbered as section 3.D.4.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ricker. We'll have discussion. Ms. Carlinio, have the first word, I believe.
Thank you. And I do have a presentation that I wanted to give just because I think that will help clarify some of the stuff that we're doing. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. Should I start from here or? Yeah, you can change it.
Before we begin the discussion portion, so we do generally conform to Robert's rules, so the time limit for speakers is generally 10 minutes, so we'll stick with that. We can go around again, though, but 10 minutes per presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I wanted to just prepare this real quickly because I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding here on what we're talking about here with our motion to amend. So this is here what we're talking about. It's a motion to amend that was circulated internally on October 3rd, 2024. And despite efforts to include a motion on informational agenda for October 14th, this was actually delayed, so that's why it was included on the November 14th, and now we're finally talking about it. So basically what we're talking about in section 3.D.4 is, again, notwithstanding the provision of paragraph 2 and 3 in this section, Shenandoah County Public Schools personnel shall refer to a student by a name other than one in the student's official record. So you can read here, or by the pronouns other than those that are appropriate to the sex appearing in the student's official record. The motion seeks to delete the 2 number paragraphs in section 3.D of the gender identity policy. There are no other changes. We just go ahead and move the other one up. The case law for this case is actually, for this reason, is actually very clear. And again, as I just read, it's talking about what the staff and teachers, what their rights are, and whether the personnel are going to be required to use these pronouns. So we had the state of Tennessee and versus Miguel Cardona, which is the Title IX case, which actually became national law January 9th, 2025. We also had Virginia was a co-plaintiff on this legal case. In no uncertain terms, the judge held that the First Amendment does not permit the government to compel teachers and others to use gender identity-based pronouns. The judge also powerfully rejected the argument that Title IX includes gender identity. That's the case law that we just saw. In addition to that, we also have several cases here in Virginia, and 2 of the most poignant ones are the one in West Point School Board, which had to pay $575,000 for violating the First Amendment rights of a teacher refusing to use those preferred pronouns. That just happened last year. Yes, in September of 2024. Prior to that, probably the thing that started it all, and we know that this is why Youngkin actually won, Governor Youngkin, it was a Loudoun County teacher that was famously reinstated by law, by a court, because his First Amendment violation over preferred pronouns. In addition to this, we have the executive order that President Trump just signed on January 29th, in ending radical indoctrination in K-12 schooling. And in that one, it talks about eliminating federal funding or support for illegal and discriminatory treatment and indoctrination in K-12 schools, including based on gender ideology, and discriminatory equity ideology. That just happened a couple of weeks ago. So that was the Trump agenda. So we as school board members have to decide on whether we're going to go with what the president is asking of us. He's done already several executive orders regarding federal employees that we're told to remove the pronouns from email signatures by the end of the day. We have his executive orders on keeping men out of women's sports. We have the Trump order restricting sex change procedures for minors in line with do not harm. And I need to say, rules matter. SCPS policies should not have any language requiring a teacher or employee to use a preferred pronoun, even if a parent writes a note requesting it. It's just unconstitutional. So I must say that whether we pass this policy or not, I want to echo what Mr. Rickard said at our last meeting last month, where no teacher and no staff here in this SCPS should ever be required to use a pronoun that goes against their First Amendment rights or even the right of religion, First Amendment. Citing this anti-retaliation section that we have in this policy to argue that a teacher can break the existing rule without being punished is illogical and confusing, because basically what we're saying is this is the rule that you must follow, but if you don't follow it, you won't be punished. It's actually very confusing. Most teachers meticulously follow the rules and may feel properly pressured to comply. We know this. Most of our teachers are really good about this. But why should a teacher have to break a rule that is unconstitutional? Now, there's a question of parental rights that a few people have actually raised. And there is no parental right to transition your kid or to use preferred pronouns in public schools. That is not what parental rights are. I think people have, there's a little bit of a discussion that needs to be had about what parental rights are. And here we have some of the legal definitions of parental rights. It's the right to direct education decisions. It's the right to be informed about curriculum and instruction. It's access to records. It's an opt-out rights for certain activities or content. It's a right to be notified of certain occurrences in the school. It's protection against privacy violations, and again, the right is to attend certain activities or not be able to attend the activities. That is what parental rights are. To expand it beyond that is to give meaning to parental rights that do not actually exist there. So we have to decide, are we going to follow the parental rights definition, legal definitions, or are we just going to try to do what California and Northern Virginia is doing? The legal risk that some people have talked about here, let me just say, every single action that the school board takes has legal risks. Right now we have President Trump that is taking all these decisions. He has the best lawyers that are advising him right now, including the Attorney General, and yet all of his policies have already been challenged in law. There is no such thing as airtight or bulletproof legal decision. No attorney can ever tell us that you do this and nothing is going to happen to you, because every single action that we take has a legal risk, and I think we've seen that already. The risk of doing this is lower than some of the other actions that the school board has taken, and the name change is a perfect example, even the model policies themselves. So we need to stop taking advice just from all the attorneys who may be liberal or may be inexperienced in this area. We were elected to make these decisions ourselves. We weren't just elected to punt the ball and say, well, this attorney said this or this attorney said that, because the reality is we don't know. And I can tell you this as an attorney. Every time we have a client and we can tell them, well, this is what I think, or this is our best way to try to avoid a lawsuit, but we don't know for certain how any of this is going to go, how the judges are going to rule. That's what the law in our country is. As we have the civil law and the common law, and that's how it works. Overwhelming, the majority of Shenandoah County residents do not want preferred pronouns in our schools. And finally, we need to do what is right, even if there is risk or pushback. It's what good leaders do. And I just wanted to say, we get a lot of questions about whether we just don't like the transgender students or whether we are going to be discriminating against them. One thing that we must say, children need to be protected. And our job here in the school is to actually teach our kids the fundamentals of education. I don't believe that teaching them about transgenderism, sexuality, political partisanship has any role in our schools. So we need to let our kids be kids. Young kids should not be thinking about sex. They should not be thinking about whether their identity is right or wrong. Most of these kids, and this is the data. I mean, I invite everybody to go and read all the data that is out there, especially the data that has been actually put out by doctors that are not biased. That most of the people who actually think that they may have a problem with gender confusion, most of them actually outgrow it by the time they're 24. And the reason is because that's the time when the brain is finally developed fully. And that's when they should be making this decision. Again, I have no problem if an adult decides that they want to be transgender. That is their prerogative. I'm talking, let's protect these kids. Let's make sure that they have a childhood. Let's make sure that we teach them what they need to learn in Shenandoah County and in all schools around our country. And let's not burden them with this confusion and whether you're a boy or whether you're a girl. Let's just go ahead and take that out of the curriculum that we're teaching. But we're not looking at that right now. We're talking about this one, and this particular policy right now is about protecting our teachers and our staff from being punished. And I'll have to tell you, we have received several staff that have actually told us that they are afraid because there are some kids that may have some gender dysphoria or are deemed to be transgender, and they don't know how to call that kid. So no teacher and no staff should be afraid that they're going to lose their job or that they're going to be punished because they're having to use a pronoun that goes against their constitutional rights. And I'll be open for any questions. Thank you very much.
Other discussion?
Excuse me, sir? May I
No,
take
these are discussion among the school board.
I understand that, sir. I just would like to...
No, please have a seat. You know, we listened to y'all early on. You can listen to us now. Have a seat.
Absolutely.
Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Van Charles.
The same concerns that I had at our last meeting are still evident today. First of all, the Code of Virginia says very clearly a parent has a fundamental right to make decisions regarding the upbringing, education, and care of their children. In the executive order cited in the PowerPoint, Section 2 of this policy reads, "It is the policy of my administration," this is President Trump speaking, "to support parents in choosing and directing the upbringing and the education of their children." Four years ago, a man by the name of Terry McCullough was running for governor of Virginia. He insisted that parents should have no role in the upbringing of their children. Well, we know how that worked out for him, except for his very thick checkbook and lots of ink. I think he's been relegated to political extinction. The policy that we have in place reminds me of a baseball. It's probably an idiom, but I'll use it anyway. I heard someone earlier speaking about Cincinnati Reds. Happens to be one of my favorites, or it used to be. So imagine Johnny Bench is at the plate, he gets the fastball he likes, bada bing, bada boom, it goes over the fence. Marty Brenneman or Joe Nuxhall, am I right about this, Mr. Dutchall, will sometimes say, well, he gets to touch all the bases on his way to the dugout.
Pretty good.
And I think the policy we have in place touches all the bases. It provides for the parental right of waiver. It allows the student who is of age to sign their own waiver. It protects parents in the upbringing of their children. It is memorialized in record, and the teachers have a shroud of immunity. And finally, paraphrasing Michael Corleone in The Godfather, my objection is not personal, it is business. It is business. There are laws against discrimination. I understand the objection based on the First Amendment. But if a teacher is uneasy or objects to using that pronoun, as I said, they have a right of immunity against retaliation. So let's move on. Let's put this to rest. There's a budget. There's capital improvement. There are some other issues that need our attention. And I shall vote no on the amendments.
Thank you. Mr. Rickard?
I just wanted to point out a few things. An employee emailed us all on December 12th. And this is her quote. She said, everyone at, I'm not going to give the school because I would give that away, has been wonderful with my son. He has been referred to as his preferred name and pronouns since he started grade level redacted. So that's accolades to our staff. A staff member messaged me on January 9th while we were on this very dais and we were talking about this. And this staff member said the issue right now on the board meeting about the gender policy is an issue currently, exclamation point. I've had 2 students who considered themselves transgender. One is currently a freshman, and we were very nervous to deal with the situation. We decided we were only going to call pronoun by pronoun legal name, regardless of what pronoun peers called pronoun and what pronoun wrote on papers. I believe our teachers should have that right. All of our staff should have that right. Nobody should feel required to participate in whatever another family believes. That's my thing on it. I think we should follow what's going on in the federal government and the current administration. Matter of fact, I'd like to see us revisit what I proposed when it comes to girls' sports within our high schools. I think it's pretty cut and dry. Our staff is looking for direction. They're looking for lanes to stay in.
Thank you. Mr. Gutschall?
So my perspective on this, we adopted this last year. The Youngkin policy, it was known as the Miares policy. It switched names 3 or 4 times. We adopted this 4-2 last year, and I know we added some extra pieces in there before we ultimately voted on it. But again, I want to reiterate, this is the Youngkin policy that we voted on last year, and we supported it, and there have been no changes from the governor or Miares as far as changing this policy. So I know the talk about Washington, D.C. and all that, but what we have to remember is, at least from my perspective, I don't want to get involved with how kids are raised and how their families, how their lifestyles are. One thing I've learned now in my 4th year is we have to make tough decisions sometimes that we may not agree with when it comes to other people and their lives. But ultimately for us, we have to do what's best for all the students, and sometimes that means we have to go extra lengths that we may not feel comfortable in some ways, but it's for the best. It's for the betterment of all the kids in the school system. So I know there's a lot of controversy around this, and ultimately what we adopted last year, I don't see an issue with it. If the governor wants to update things moving forward from the state level, I think that's something we would look into. But again, I'm kind of with Mr. Vance. I don't see why we would get involved with the lifestyle of families that are in the community.
My statement, and then Mr. Carlini will have the last word unless we go around again, but we can't do that. So the Youngkin model turned out to be really, really a good model. And I think it did so because it guaranteed people's constitutional rights across the board. And I think it did wind up being a bulletproof policy for teachers. Teachers are no longer at risk for being censured or disciplined for using not preferred pronouns. It doesn't happen anymore in this school, in this system. Where it did where it was not implemented, that's where problems occurred, and we've seen several cases of people in the Dominion teachers walking away with $470,000, $450,000 settlements because they were forced to. So we avoided that, and we have protected our teachers. Paragraph H does it specifically, and this board actually made it a little stronger and reinforced it. So we actually had Youngkin on steroids, not many steroids, but it's stronger. It specifically added the concept of no retaliation against teachers, specific words. I was going to talk about how we spent a lot of time on this back in spring, and I do agree with Mr. Vance that there are a lot of other topics we probably should have been taking on that have to do with education and raising educational standards rather than replowing this field 2 or 3 times. And we've had a really, really good policy. What I would not like to see us do is to get it in imbalance so that a parent who does what the law requires at this point to change the name of the student on their record has the right to do that, still has the right to do that. And our Attorney General, Mayaris, who wrote or oversaw the writing of the Youngkin policy, has agreed with that. A few of the people on this board know and I think respect have spoken out on this topic. At the December 5th SBMA symposium, Tim Griffin, who's a delegate and a lawyer from Bedford, said the Youngkin transgender policy should have been passed without changes, otherwise we are at risk. Josh Hetzler at the Family Forum, Family Foundation, said that what that group does mostly is concerned with supporting parental rights. Said on top of this, with what's happening today, the Family Foundation will come out soon with guidance based on all the lawsuits that are breaking out, but Mr. Hetzler cautions about doing anything until some of these cases are decided. And one of the cases that we're waiting to hear about is the Grimm case, which still drives state law in some ways, but is being challenged, and there should be readings on it very soon. At the January 22nd SBMA Legislative Roundtable in Richmond, Attorney General Jason Mayari spoke to a group of about 15 of us. And when asked about this question about trying to improve or amend the Youngkin policy, he said, follow the Youngkin model. A lot is happening. Judgments in the next 60 to 120 days will come through the Department of Justice and staffers and will provide cover. And then his quote was, the cavalry is coming. The irony, he said, is that we could be facing federal violations if we act proactively now and then lose the case. And he said the irony would be that our Attorney General's office would have to be in the business of prosecuting those cases of those people who acted proactively. He observed that the public sides with, I think, most of us on this board who are concerned with the protection of women in locker rooms, in athletics, and in terms of confusion between the two genders as they participate. And he said, with the realization that the public is with us on that, we still need to be careful and be consistent. He said, compassion must be shown to those with gender dysphoria, even though it goes away by age 17 to 24 in most cases, that compassion and understanding is still necessary. He says, be careful of invoking the executive order because it has no lawful authority for us. And then I further wonder if indeed the president says does what he says and says, we're not gonna have Department of Education, then there's not gonna be much of an executive order left for us to be able to obey, because what we're gonna be stuck with is what I think most of us want, which is a state-controlled educational system. The final person who spoke that day was the person who actually helped write this, and that's Elizabeth Schultz, the Virginia Assistant State Superintendent for the Department of Education at one point, and a senior fellow for the Parents Defending Education. She's now in charge of the task force for marijuana in the state. And she said, the model policy was so very well crafted. And she made an analogy I thought was a good one, and I'd like to end with. She said, you, talking to the school board members, said, you have a chance now to get behind the snow plow and let it get the stuff out of your way so you can move ahead, or you can jump ahead of the snow plow and try to move the snow yourself, and you're going to get hurt in the process, and you're going to incur risks that you just don't have to incur. So I think those four folks have kind of buttressed my feeling that my base feeling, which is Governor Youngkin probably did win the election based on parental rights. And we would be silly if we tried to pick which parental rights are sacrosanct instead of saying parental rights are sacrosanct. That's all I have.
Quick question, when was that meeting again that you had?
The legislative roundtable?
Yes.
Was January 22nd in Richmond at the Family Forum.
So it was before the executive order was actually unveiled?
I'm not sure what it was, but I do know that that's when.
Well, the executive order was unveiled on January 29th. But that's okay,
Well, you asked me the question, let me answer it.
Mm-hmm.
Attorney General Myrie said, be careful of invoking an executive order. It has no lawful authority to us. So, there you go.
Okay, I'm just saying he talked about an executive order that had not been made out public yet. So I just have a few things that I wanted to kind of address again. One of the things that Kyle said, for example, is about the Youngkin policy. That it passed, and the IRS was very much one of the drafters in there. But just to point of information, that actually happened well before the cases that were decided that I actually cited. So the cases that I cited with regards to the case law, the case from Tennessee and versus Cardona, as well as the lawsuits that we saw in West Point, Virginia, happened after that policy was drafted. But before I do my final comments, I just wanted to see, can Mr. Vance read that code again that you just read before, the Virginia Code?
Virginia Code 1-240.
Yeah, can you read the language, please, that you read before?
I'm sorry?
Can you read the language that you read to us before?
Parent has a fundamental right to make decisions regarding the upbringing, education, and care of a parent's child.
Right. So I'm still not sure where exactly in forcing our staff to have to use a pronoun in violation of the constitutional rights actually violates that. Because what we're saying here is a parent still has the right to do that. A parent can still do whatever they want at this point. And some people actually ask me, well, what if a teacher wants to use the pronoun? Fine, if that's what they decide to do, they can use that pronoun if they want to. What we're doing is we are deleting the part where we say that the staff, the teachers, have to use a pronoun. Now, again, I actually said that this is, according to the case law and according to the case that we've had here in Virginia, to uphold the constitutional rights of our teachers. So let me ask you, Mr. Vance, actually I'll ask everybody here, which one takes precedence? Is it the Constitution or the Virginia Code?
I don't see the constitutional issue there because we're not compelling speech.
It is compelling speech. If you're telling a teacher that they have to use.
Objector cannot use the pronoun and not be retaliated.
Can the Virginia Code,
compelling speech.
well, can the Virginia Code violate a teacher's constitutional right?
No, it doesn't.
No, no, it can't, right?
There was a Supreme Court case called Hawkins in which the Supreme Court held that parents have absolute autonomy in the upbringing of their children.
Okay, but again, nobody is questioning that. What we're talking about is what is a teacher and a staff going to be compelled to do? So again, the parents' rights are not being violated at all. We're talking up here about the personnel, and I'm going to read it again, the personnel shall refer to a student by a name. So we're talking about personnel. This is about protecting our personnel. So again, I ask, can the Code of Virginia violate the constitutional rights of a person?
Any state law must answer to the Constitution because of the supremacy clause.
That's exactly right. So what I'm saying again is, let's separate the two arguments here, because everybody keeps talking about parental rights and saying the parent still has the right to do this. And again, if a teacher wants to call that student by that pronoun, they can. Nobody's saying that they cannot do this. This is about whether we're going to be forcing a teacher to have to use a specific pronoun, especially if it goes against their their First Amendment right. So that is all I'm asking. I put it all out there. I put all the information. So it's up to this board members to decide what they're gonna, what kind of protections they're gonna afford to our personnel.
Well, in answer to your question, the policy, the Youngkin model itself, under protections, says, notwithstanding any other provision in this policy, Shenandoah County Public Schools shall not compel, discipline, retaliate against, or otherwise disadvantage any student, teacher, staff member, or other person to address or refer to any students using pronouns or other words inconsistent with the student's actual biological sex or is reflected by the official record. And so it is ironclad. No teacher is going to be disadvantaged or have any of these negative aspects occur to them if they decide that they're going to use the pronouns.
Again, because the language.
I'm not. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. But there still gives the parent the right to change the official record of the child's name. So it's a parental right we're talking about there. We're not talking about any threat to the teacher or to the staff member involved.
Again, and I didn't recognize you in my time, but I'm glad that you said that, because we're talking about the personnel. I mean, that's what we just talked about right now, is what the personnel is going to have. So yes, it has nothing to do with, I mean, I don't understand what other, I mean, maybe by speaking Spanish, that would be easier to understand, but in no way are the parental rights being violated here. The parent still has the right to do this. And again, teachers and staff who want to comply with that are more than welcome to. We're talking about the teachers who are being compelled to actually use that pronoun in violation of their constitutional right. But you know what? Like I said, it's fine. As you suggested before, I have a feeling that a lot of this is going to change in the next few months. So even if we don't pass this right now, I'm sure we'll be right here again in no time.
The job of the Shenandoah County Public School System is...
Sorry, I thought I had the final word. Are we going to go another round? Oh, we're going to go another round?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
So who has the microphone, Mr. Parliamentarian?
Whoever the chair recognizes.
Mr. Vance, you have the floor.
Shenandoah County Public School System has the responsibility to educate all and not set personal agendas. There will be diversity, there will be different backgrounds, there will be different beliefs, and has been cited long ago. You just never know the luggage that students bring into the classroom that we don't know about. So I don't see the compulsion. And as I said previously, the job is to educate. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Rickard?
Kudos to you. I'd like to address our job is to educate. And as long as we stay focused on that. And one thing you pointed out is nobody's being compelled. But heaven forbid the first time one of these teachers or staff members brings a lawsuit against Shenandoah County because they don't want to participate in this. I personally will stand by their side. My wife is a staff member of Shenandoah County, and I don't think any of our staff should feel like they have to participate in somebody else's mental illness. Point blank, but like you said, our job is to educate. I'd like to stay focused on that.
Anything further? No. Anything further?
Well, you're done too?
I'm done.
No, again, just want to reiterate once again, and we welcome everyone. And the reason why we're doing this, I don't know how any other reason that anybody else does it. I have met transgender people, and one of them is dead. Even though they were completely accepted by their community, even though their parents pushed for that ideology to happen. And the reason that happened is because that child had different problems, had been sexually abused for many years by a family member. But in that confusion, they were told that, well, maybe it's just that you're really a boy and not really a girl. To tell a child this kind of stuff, it's very mind-boggling, especially when a child does not understand what life is, what's going to bring, what sexuality is, what gender is. I mean, I was a tomboy. I love playing with boys. I love playing with Hot Wheels. I love doing sports. That's how I grew up. And that's how a lot of kids grew up when I was growing up. This is not about this. This is about whether we're going to be forcing our teachers to have to comply with an order from a parent, with an order that a parent has a right to do. Because we wouldn't have this amendment, this paragraph, we wouldn't have it if the parent didn't have the right to do this. So if the parent didn't have the right to do this, then this problem wouldn't exist. But because the parent has the right to do this, and they can change the record, and some teachers may want to adopt it or not adopt it, that's fine. This is not touching that. What it's touching is the fact that the parents, that the teachers that don't want to use this are not going to be punished. And I understand the retaliation part that we put in this because I'm the one who included it in here. But what we're talking about is there's confusion. We have one side of the policy that is saying one thing, and then we have another one that is saying another one. Personally, I like to have clarity, and personally, I would like to have a policy that actually applies to everybody, but that's okay. We can leave it like this, and I'm sure that we'll take a vote, and most likely we'll be revisiting this at some other time. Hopefully it'll be after Kyle is gone, so he doesn't have to go through here. I know you don't like it.
Call for the question.
Call for the question. We just, okay. Yeah, so remind us again, Cheryl, of the amendment and what a yes and no vote indicate. Thank you, I'm sorry. Go
The
ahead.
motion by Ms. Carlenia was I move to adopt policy GBAB/JFHAB, privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Shenandoah County Public Schools, as presented with the removal of sections 3D4 and 3D5. Section 3D6 will be renumbered as section 3D4. And it was seconded by Mr. Ritter.
Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Carlenio?
Yes.
Mr. Betshaw?
No.
Mr. Vance?
No.
Mr. Ricker?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
No. The measure fails 3-2. And we will move on. Strasburg River Wall. Okay. All right, 6.3 is the Strasburg Riverwalk. Dr. Shepard, do you want to give us background or?
So the only thing that I'll say about this is I had the opportunity to talk to the football coach last week or 2 weeks ago, and he said that option 1 and option 2 would actually interfere with their football practice because they use every single bit of that football field. So his, I guess my recommendation at this point, based on his feedback, would be to go with option 3, which would be just the parking area and the path to the boat launch.
Is there a, we had 3 options here. We just heard the rationale from the superintendent. We can have discussion a bit, but is there a proposed motion based on that recommendation or another point of view?
I move to approve option 3, granting the town of Strasburg permission to establish a parking area and walking path on Shenandoah County School Board property along South Holiday Street.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm the second to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vance, for that second. Is there discussion? Mr. Rickard.
The reason I was going with that option originally, I liked the idea of the Riverwalk going down through there, but I did go and meet with our athletic director, Matt Heiserman. I also spoke on the phone with Coach Lamb and Coach Gutierrez, both football coaches within the program there. While I like the idea of extending the Riverwalk down through there, it would definitely impede practice and school usage and make it unsafe for citizens to be in that area during those times as well. So to me, after speaking with them, the only logical thing to do was to go with option 3.
Likewise, I spoke to some folks, including the mayor of Strasburg, the vice mayor, the football coach, Principal Faults, and aside from the 10 feet not being available, I walked down there one Sunday morning after church, and I was hoping to see lots of overhanging sycamore limbs where they didn't need that 10 feet, but that didn't exist. So actually, the reason why we endorse option 3 is a safety factor, because you're allowing a lot of uninvited guests on school property during school hours. Possibility, as you said, of interfering with football practice, both varsity and junior varsity. And I agree, a river walk is very refreshing. I enjoy mine, but I don't have to worry about a 230-pound linebacker knocking me down in the river over the riverbank. And probably 99 and 44/100% of all the people using the Riverwalk are good, wholesome citizens, but it's the complement to that could cause a lot of mischief. And if you know where the phrase 99 and 44/100% came from, I'll give you $1 at the end of the meeting. It was an advertising gimmick, and I'll be around to give you your $1.
All right. Other comments?
No.
Comments? I have no comments, and so we can call the question on this as well. And if you would like to call, so once again, the motion is, I'll just say it, is the option 3, granting the town of Strasburg permission to establish a parking area and walking path on Shenandoah County School Board along South Holiday Street. Cheryl?
Ms. Carlenia?
Yes.
Mr. Betshaw?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Rickard?
Yes.
And Mr. Barlow?
Yes. I would like to personally commend Mr. Rickard and Mr. Vance for putting eyes on target, talking to the people who were involved, finding out what was actually going on there on the ground. So that was invaluable. So thank you very much for your input. Appreciate that. Policy 2BP, library materials selection. goes back to the library material selection policy that was approved over a year ago, and the effectiveness of it since then, and based on library visits by members of the board and subsequent reactions from the staff. My library's materials selection has been revised, and it is before us today. Do we have a motion to approve the policy 2BP, the library materials selection as revised?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Any second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gutschall, thank you for that. Is there any discussion?
Are we still, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Are we still giving the parents time to review this? Is there still time for that review to happen?
Yes, indeed, and I would, I could ask the superintendent to tell us about that. She's been more involved than I in that aspect, so let me turn it over to her if you don't mind.
I don't mind, thank you.
So this goes from a twice-a-year review to a monthly review or submission by the librarians for the books that they want to purchase. The principals review it monthly. The directors of education review it monthly, and then it gets posted to the website after that for the parents to be able to review. So it'll still be at least a 2-month process before it gets to the school board for approval, but then it'll get to the school board for approval. The review committee, if there are any books that any of the groups along the way would like to review, then the review committee will get together every 6 months to review those books. They will not meet monthly to review any books that have been requested for further review. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
thank you.
So the motion is I move to approve policy IIBP, library material selection as revised. The motion was made by Mr. Vance and seconded by Mr. Gutschall. Ms. Carlenio?
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Ricker?
Yes.
And Mr. Barlow?
Yes. And before we move on, I would like to say that that the process over the last year, especially in December, was, I'll use the word delightful, in that Mr. Gutschall and Mr. Vance and I formed kind of a tag team group that went around to all the libraries. We were accompanied by, or maybe we were babysat, I'm not sure, by the superintendent and Dr. Heimgartner and others, and those from the instructional staff. So it was all hands on deck. The librarians were gracious, learned, proactive, and even though it was impacting on Christmas holiday, quickly it was a very positive interaction, and I want to commend everybody who was involved for, I think, a really positive action. So thank you for that. 6.5 is a request to increase the fiscal year 25 budget as was presented to us. Was that presented to us earlier? Or, no, this is so this is an adoption from the 2025 budget in the amount of it's 97 million. So this includes this is our target at this point.
This is an additional appropriation in the special budget for $14,653.97.
Okay, are we talking about 6.5?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're right. So the net at the bottom there is 14,653. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate that. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve that, the request to increase the special budget by $14,653.97?
I move to approve the request to increase the fiscal year 2025 special budget by $14,653.97 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. Second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Vance. Any discussion? If not, a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Ms. Carlenia?
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Ricker?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes. So it passes 5-0. And we move to our last agenda item, which is 6.6. And do I have a motion to approve that request to increase the budget by $49,227.20?
I move to approve the request to increase the fiscal year 2025 special budget by $49,227.20 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. So the motion was made by Mr. Rickard and seconded by Mrs. Carlinia. Any discussion? Then roll call vote, please. Cheryl?
Ms. Carlenia?
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Ricker?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes. Again, 5-0 vote, and we have now completed the action items. It's time for Superintendent's monthly report.
Thank you. So happy School Board Appreciation Month. We had 22 students from our 3 elementary schools and 3 middle schools compete in the annual county spelling bee on January 24th. After several rounds of intense spelling, the 6 finalists qualified for the regional spelling bee. The top 3 finishers were Lindsay King, who was first, Leighton Gerald, second, both from Signal Knob Middle School, and James Funkhauser, third from North Fork Middle School. The regional spelling bee is Saturday, March 1st at 10 o'clock at Skyline Middle School in Harrisonburg. I hope to see you there. Members of our high school and middle school FFA chapters participated in FFA Day at the Capitol in January, joining nearly 700 FFA members from across the state. Our SCPS representative shared the importance of FFA in agriculture education with Senator Timmy French and Delegate Todd Gilbert, Delegate Dolores Oates, and other elected representatives. All 3 of our elementary schools celebrated the 100th day of school this past Friday. Students and staff alike dressed up and participated in a variety of activities to mark the milestone of being 100 days smarter since the start of the school year. This past Friday, Mr. Hensley and myself had the pleasure of delivering the news to 9 of our staff members that their proposed grants had been approved for the Moore Educational Trust Grant. The project ranged from a new courtyard at Ashby Lee Elementary School to an interactive projection and computer system at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I always loved this day, getting to see staff and their reactions when they learned that they were selected for this grant. I would like to congratulate the Central Boys Swim Team on their Region 2B title in Warrenton on Monday. The Falcons were led by junior Grayson Dalton, who was named the Region 2B Boys Swimmer of the Year. Strasburg finished second in both the boys and girls meets, with sophomore Emily Davis being named the Region 2B Girls Swimmer of the Year. Congratulations to Strasburg Wrestling Team on winning its 6th straight Region 2B wrestling title. The 3-time reigning Class 2 state champions had 11 wrestlers qualify for the Class 2 state meet in Salem. Congratulations to Stonewall Jackson High School on winning the Scholastic Academic Bowl and being named this year's Bull Run District Champs. And congratulations to Strasburg senior Willow Musterman, Abigail Jones, and Avery Starkey on being selected to the Class 2 All-State Cheer Competition cheer team. Musterman and Jones were named to the first team. Starkey was named to the second team. And then the last thing, we had, last but not least, we had students from all of our high schools and middle schools selected to participate in the District 14 Choir Festival this past week. Unfortunately, weather ended up canceling the all-district choir concert on Saturday, but we wanted to congratulate all of our talented singers who got the chance to audition and rehearse. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. A lot of good news there, thank you.
Yes.
I've got one question.
Mm-hmm.
I was going through the transportation report,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gone through it before, and I had questions, and I guess I should ask Lucas about this. Maybe you can answer. But if I've got two buses that are the same year, make and model, and for instance, I'm looking at two right now that are 2020s, and one traveled 496 miles and used 75 gallons of fuel. But then I see another one that went less mileage, 475 miles, but used almost twice the amount of fuel. Do we know why that is? Has anybody ever asked that before?
So no one's ever asked that. I don't have the answer. I'm looking at my colleague, Dr. Heimgartner, to see if he has an answer. Yeah.
There's quite a few in there where it's the same model, same year, but one goes a certain amount of miles, the other one goes less but burns almost twice the amount of fuel.
They're probably going to Fort Valley.
So
They're probably going to Fort Valley.
I'm going to guess. It'll be interesting to see what Dr. Heimgartner finds out, but it is the number of students on the bus, so the load, versus where they go, whether it's town or mountain. That's my guess. We'll see if I'm right.
I'm just curious, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
School board member comments. Who wants to start off?
Sure, you want to throw it to me, I'll take it.
Whoever wants to step up, go for it.
Mine's short and sweet. I've had some parents reach out to me here recently on the southern end. And apparently there's an issue I had heard with kids wearing headbands with ears on them and tails. I've since reached out to a parent I know well that has kids that attend that school, and they confirmed that yes, those kids are wearing tails. They're not sure about the ears. So I went back to our student handbook last night, and on page 40, we have on there about hoods, hats, or face masks are not allowed inside the school. So I would like us to discuss if our boys can't wear a baseball hat in school, then we shouldn't be allowing any kids to wear headbands with ears on them and tails behind them. I don't think it's proper dress code, and I would like to see us discuss that topic. If any school board member would like to know what school in particular, you can reach out to me and I will let you know.
I've heard the same thing. And I think this is what school board member comments are for. I appreciate you bringing that up. I think we, in context of not only the headgear limitations, but also in terms of dress code writ large, it's worth conversation. So I appreciate you putting that up there, and that will be a discussion item.
The only other thing I've got is the public comments tonight. They made our school system sound horrible, our staff sound horrible. I want to give kudos to our staff. Our staff does a really good job of taking care of the kids, talking to the kids like the kids want to be talked to. And I want to make it clear that all I'm trying to do by strengthening our policy is making it to where our staff doesn't have to feel like they have to do something. Our staff does a pretty good job of doing what they want to do and respecting all the kids. I have yet to hear about any of our kids being discriminated against in any of our schools. So I just want to tell the staff that's here tonight, all the staff that works for Shenandoah County Public Schools, you all do a great job. I know I'm getting invitation after invitation for breakfast, lunch, for School Board Appreciation Month. The kudos go to you guys in the buildings. You guys are the ones that make this county look good. You guys are the ones, boots on the ground, educating our kids day in and day out. So thank you.
I had a very enjoyable and positive visit at Peter Muhlenberg Middle School last Friday. Happened to be in the library when some folks came in with some money for the library. That was a good feeling. it was such a good visit, I was invited back in April, and Mr. Chairman, you'll be happy to know they'll be doing an exercise in the library involving classic literature, which I know is one of yours. And did anyone figure out the 99 and 44 100%? 'Cause, yes, sir. You got it. Bingo. We have bingo. Do not hold your cards because he gets the dollar.
Shorter age, aren't we?
Good job, sir. You know we're going to have a lot bigger crowd next year trying to get some money out of you. Kyle, go ahead.
Mr. Rickard mentioned it. I'd like to highlight, with it being February, it's a good opportunity. Typically, we're invited to all sorts of different things, and it's always a good opportunity to go into a school that it may not be on your campus, and you may not contact the principal very often, but they're contacting you, inviting you in, and it's a good opportunity to see different people and see how each school is working, whether it's in Strasburg or Woodstock or Mount Jackson. So I encourage everyone up here. I know it's time consuming sometimes and it can be hard to fit it in their schedule, but it's definitely a good experience going in and seeing what all the schools are up to and how each one is a little bit different. So I encourage everyone to do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm very glad to see people coming to our meetings. I have some notes here because I'm hoping that they can see that we do a lot more that what gets typically reported on the news. And I've had people reach out to me and say, oh, all you're doing is gender ideology. And unfortunately, that's what's more problematic, and that's what gets to be have more conflict. But the truth of the matter is, when people reach out to us, if you're really listening to all the other meetings, we do a lot more than that. And even a lot of the stuff that you see here, like for example in the budget, when you talk about the student support specialist, that's kind of my request. When you see stuff like when we're talking about the incentives, that's something that we've been talking about. So there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that you don't get to see unless we're actually talking about it. One of the things Mr. Rigger and I keep doing, working very hard at the personnel committee and talking to teachers, and we're going to start doing our meetings pretty soon again. Another one is the mental health task force. We have some members here today, but we just met earlier in the month. And it was great because we got to talk to the student representatives again, and that's always something that we always look forward to because we get to listen to them and what their concerns are. And it was interesting to hear, for example, about the cell phone policy. You see the middle schoolers kind of really like it. They said they get to talk more, they get to be more kids again. The high schoolers that are a little bit more used to having that cell phone in their hands are a little bit more weary about it. So you can tell that the younger they are and they get started on this, the better it'll be for them. They also talked about a few other things, like one of the kids actually said that we should be doing more tutoring. Several of them actually said that they liked the program that we used to have that was a Friendly Giants, and we're going to be looking to see if we still have that or if we need to implement it again. Also just one thing that's kind of universal, and I keep hearing this all over the world, all over the area, is how much they hate the Chromebooks. So I don't know if that's something that I want to see if we can start looking into using the Chromebooks less and less and less, because I just don't think the kids are learning enough from that. I also wanted to address some of the things that were said today because, and Stu, I know a lot of the people have left already, but, I understand why there's a lot of assumptions that there's hatred towards some kids, or that we hate the transgender people, or that they're predators, and that's not right at all. I mean, the reason why I've written about this and I've talked about this before, but the reason that I've made this a big issue is because I know the suffering that goes on with a lot of these kids. They are actually the victims. We should let them be kids. We should let them grow. We should let them learn about the world before they make these decisions that are going to be for the rest of their lives. I mean, they're going to be mutilating their bodies. They're going to be hooked on drugs for the rest of their lives. There's a lot of things that go on that only adults that know what their repercussions are should be making. And I know because I have met some of these people, and I have several good friends whose kids are actually facing that problem right now. So I know the suffering that goes on both sides. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. I also wanted to, it's always interesting when we talk about diversity and all that, and one of the things that I always chuckle about is trying to say that we should treat everybody with equality while also highlighting how we're different. And to me that, I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. Spanish is my first language. I never, ever felt discriminated against or like I was not welcome at a school because they weren't talking about Puerto Rico or because they weren't talking about me being Puerto Rican. No, if anything, I enjoy being able to feel like I'm part of the group without having to be different. So again, that's just my perspective on that. I also want to just make a mention of the discussion that was brought about in the comments and also in the amendment that is up in the informational agenda, which have an issue with that, but beyond that, what I wanted to talk about is that the policy that we passed last month unanimously was about teaching of gender ideology. This is something that was just part of our teaching about controversial issues. There's other controversial issues that we don't want to have our kids being discussed. Right now, everybody talks about how we need to kind of focus on the reading and writing and arithmetic. I agree. That's exactly what we should be focusing on. So the idea of removing some of these issues that have no place in a school should not be controversial. But that's what that particular policy was about. So the amendment that we have been discussing actually has nothing to do with the teaching. It has to do with advising and counseling, which that was actually submitted by Mr. Street and written by Mr. Gottschall. And his concern, and I understand it, his concern is that we want to make sure that all the kids have access to counseling. And that's correct. Our kids should have access to counseling, and they do. We already have this policy that we just talked about today actually has all the provisions regarding all the kids having access to that. So that's not changing. I don't think it was particularly understood that that was already in place, and that also that particular policy that we passed last month was in the teaching, in the instruction category of our manual. So I'm hoping that that's something that we'll be able to discuss, because again, trying to say that the counselors and the advisors and a lot of people that actually shouldn't be teaching would have been allowed to teach the gender ideology pretty much renders the whole policy moot. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to discuss that. And not to mention the fact that, again, and I know some people are saying that we don't need to necessarily follow executive orders from the president, but the president in his executive order expressly provides that schools that allow their psychologists or counselors to advise students on these issues will lose the federal funding. So that's something that we're going to have to understand, because yeah, we can decide not to follow it, but then we may lose our federal funding. Another thing was that regarding this, there's been a lot of back and forth, and the former school board member, Brandy Rutz, who quit this board in October, actually made a mention in an email today, and I'm going to quote what she said. She said, currently there are 2 students in SCPS that are identifying differently than their sex. Both of these children are parent pushed. I have a problem with this, and I hope that here, that everybody understands that here in Shenandoah County, we're going to welcome everybody, regardless of what their sex or ideology or whatever it is. We are going to love our kids the same. However, if we know of any kids who are being pushed to do anything that could be harmful to them, or that could be something that could be changing their lives, we need to be aware of this. Because we're all mandated reporters, and if there is a kid that is being pushed to do something like this, and we need to be able to notify the pertinent authorities so they can actually treat with that. So, and again, to reiterate what I said before and what Mr. Rickard said, I understand we did not pass the amendment to the policy today, but any teacher that feels like they're being forced to violate their constitutional rights in using that pronoun, I'll be standing next to Mr. Rickard as well if they decide that they need to sue the school.
Well, I doubt if they're going to be doing that because the policy already prohibits it, so they really won't need your support.
That's right.
So let me say one thing I wanted to say, which is for the last the time I've been here, I've been kind of figuratively wagging my finger at the staff and teachers and the superintendent to raise expectations increase academic performance, enforce a fair disciplinary code, tackle the ideas of now of attendance, and we gestured at and are dealing with dress codes and things like that, all of which I think have impact on education and achieving those two goals. So good. Now it's time to kind of wag my finger figuratively at the school board for kind of gone off the track a little bit here. And I look at the school board norms and see what is required of us. And the heart and soul of how we govern in our school board norms is that board members agree to being involved to our individual level of comfort and to operate in a collegial and friendly atmosphere, and will value a consensus rather than a majority rule. There have been some behaviors from members of the board, not pointing fingers at anybody, perhaps pointing fingers at myself more than anybody, I don't know. But we have to work better at being better together. And we haven't done a good job of it recently. And I don't think anybody would look at our behaviors recently and say we're strong model for students in our system. And so I encourage us as a group, as a board, to try to be a little bit more civil with each other, to try to be a little bit more working with each other rather than outside of our comfort zones or our bubbles. So I hope we can rededicate ourselves to working as a board a little bit more effectively than we have been in the recent past. I know that sounds harsh, but if we're going to hold our kids and our stakeholders and our teachers and our staff to a standard of doing that, I think we should try to raise ourselves to that same standard. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Mr. Gutschall? Second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Rickard. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 9:25.
I don't have my
tonight.
3 minutes. Thank you
have all
all
kinds of
for letting
I know, that's why I put
Thanks for listening. Thank you.